which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I would take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The consent agenda, has everybody had a chance to glance through that?
Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
did one thing.
Yep.
Councilman Wolf did email myself this afternoon asking about two things, and so I wanted to, on the payables, so I just wanted to
Okay.
share those with the group. Under planning, Scott County Treasurer, Eagle View Imagery for $1,500. That is our aerial photos for for the GIS mapping system that we pay to Scott County annually to be able to participate with that. And then the other one was under building inspector. There is a $360 charge for vehicle washing. That is an annual payment for 2 vehicles over the course of the year. So just to kind of clarify what those two were, Councilman Wolf.
It just sounded like expensive car washes.
They'll last more than a year, too.
I didn't know if Ken had a lot of cars.
Okay, and then the other thing is that there's correction on all these resolutions for lawful gambling. It's post 45, not 451. There's, I think, 3 of them, maybe 2, but that's the only other thing that I caught. So with that, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, now we have Chris Cavett, city engineer.
Okay,
Hi,
and everybody can hear me okay?
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I think this should work okay. Okay, are you able to see the offset intersection diagram? it
Yes.
looks like? Okay, actually, I'll go back to this one. It's a little simpler, but I got both of them up. Well, what you have before you is consideration for basically some amendment to the engineering agreement to look at the revised intersection. As you get into a project, sometimes things evolve during that design process, and actually pretty late during the feasibility phase, we had some discussion with staff. The questions kind of came up about, geez, is there anything that we could do with this intersection, this offset intersection at 2nd Street and Columbus? And honestly, at the time, it didn't seem like it was really anything that was going to be real viable or feasible. But what I did plan, I should say back up, during the feasibility phase, we didn't have that in our scope or our budget, and was really felt that it was kind of late at that time to try to address it and keep the feasibility portion on scope. So what we did is had budgeted and planned for some minimal planning hours to look at conceptually what could be done there. We had one of our geometry specialists take a look at that intersection and came up with about 3 different options. I'm not going to show the 3 options, but came up with about 3 options, including one was a mini roundabout. Pretty much the unanimous consensus was the option that we have shown here on the exhibit here. Next step we did is we did approach. We were having discussions already, or starting to have discussions with the hospital to make sure we were addressing their needs along Columbus. But we also brought up the potential realignment of the intersection to see if that was viable, and they'd be willing to kind of partner or work with us on that. And they did get back to us within a few days and said that they were certainly open to it. I think they were looking at seeing it as an opportunity to improve some of the pedestrian crossings for the employees. It will impact their property. So the next thing we did is we did approach the resident on the southeast quadrant at 209 Columbus, and had a good meeting and conversation with them. and they seem to be very cooperative to the concept and idea. So what went from kind of doubtful in my mind or our minds was to something that was looked fairly reliable as a potential. So our next step basically is to move forward. If council is in support of it, is basically to refine and define these alignments. And we have kind of another concept here that has a lot more information on it. Basically, to refine the alignment, we go through a number of iterations to make sure it works out. Probably the biggest factor, though, is working through easements and working through easement agreements with property owners, and doing easement descriptions and getting easement documents put together. That's probably the critical path item we have here. The other thing that the hospital's been looking at is a patient drop-off, and it actually looks like it's going to work out actually kind of a win-win situation where the alignment's going to allow for a protected area for patient drop-off. It's something they would like to do. It looks like we can kind of incorporate it into the project, and as part of our kind of a cooperative effort of getting easements and things like that. So there's certainly going to be some impact to the hospital, but they seem to be pretty cooperative in working with us on taking care of this. So the proposal I have before you again is an amendment to our current proposal, and it's basically to take care of the additional work that would be required to include this in the plans. This intersection certainly is more complex than just refitting in what's there. So we have it broken down into the kind of additional design work that'd be required. Another task was, again, the easement acquisition services. And then there'll be a minor amount of additional work that'll be required for construction, mostly just a little bit of time for additional staking, construction staking, and then a minor amount of time for the construction observer to deal with that portion of the project. So that's what I have outlined in the proposals, those three tasks. Again, all accounted for a realignment. Any questions or comments, I guess?
I've actually got two of them for you, Chris.
Yes.
You're gonna be working over, I suppose there'll be some compensation for 209 and, the hospital, huh?
Yes, yep, there'll be some compensation for easement acquisition, and that's one thing we did talk to them about. Probably directly compensation for 209 for the hospital. Some of it may be negotiable. Again, what we may do is as a trade-off, it's again, we're looking at some curb work and a curb cut potentially for the opening. We'll definitely quantify that cost, as well as quantify the cost for the easement, and hopefully it's something we can just negotiate an even trade, or some minimal amount of compensation.
Yeah,
There will be some
209,
impact to
I
the
can see that.
hospital.
I can see 209, but I don't, the hospital, that's kind of a give and push and shove here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they'll certainly have some impact. They've got a sign that'll have to be relocated, and that'll certainly be on the city's or the project's dime. And then there is a monument, kind of a landscape wall that will be partially impacted, and there'll have to be something done to it. And again, we'll work with them on what that value and cost is. And so we certainly don't have all the total dollar number answers, but we'll be working through that with them. And again, as much as can be a trade-off, that'll be to everybody's advantage. And that's really what the hospital sees as well.
Second question would be, are you gonna bring this in front of us again with a, sidewalk plan, or?
Well, the sidewalk it's shown, it's hard to see. There's sidewalk along all this. There's sidewalk north-south on Columbus, east-west on the west leg of Second. And then there'll be a start of a sidewalk that is not shown right now, but there'll be a start of a sidewalk that will head eastbound on Second on the north side, with the balance of that sidewalk to be put in someday in the future. And certainly if you need more information on sidewalks, I can provide that. But yeah, there'll be full sidewalk both east and west side of Columbus, all the way from Main Street, all the way up to 4th Street. And then from 4th Street up to 7th, it's just located along the cemetery on the west side.
Is that, right in front of 209? Is that little symbol there? Is that a handicap or ramp or something?
Yeah, they're not directly illustrated here, but yeah, the ramps will be basically right across here. That'll be the crossing. It'll get a person onto the sidewalk, and then it'll be a crossing again north to south across that leg of Second.
I
So
think
this is not a real deep. This is just a conceptual drawing, the one that were provided for the utilities and stuff. So again, we haven't gotten into the full-blown detail just yet. That's part of what our scope of work is here.
And you're gonna do that during the, improvement of Columbus Avenue?
Correct. Our plan here is to get this, if with approval of this realignment, proposed realignment, we'll get this incorporated in the construction plans, and this will all get taken care of. We'll get it added to the plans, and it'll all be taken care of under this project, correct?
All right, thank you.
Chris? Oh,
Go ahead.
good, thank you. Chris, I'm looking at the diagram, and from a traffic flow perspective, what do we really gain? And we still are gonna have a stop sign on Second, right? And, because I come through this intersection all the time, and if there's two cars at the stop sign, and we're not sure, who's going where, and we've got multiple signal lights going, I just don't see how this gets us anything that we have, that changes much what we have right now.
Yeah, it's, for those if you go through the intersection, it certainly causes some confusion. If there's two cars at the intersection at the same time, it won't change it from a stop condition. But it does make it a little less confusing for the cars that are crossing or going through. For those taking lefts, it just helps with some of the traffic flow. Probably the biggest improvement is for pedestrian crossings, because if you look under it, you kind of have to look under the underline here. But you got your north-south crossing here. You've got to come all the way up here for an east-west crossing. Your east-west crossing here, I don't know if it even exists, but of course we'll get it in there. If we leave the intersection as it is, we'll have an east-west crossing here. We'll have an east-west crossing here, north-south here, north-south here. It's a little messier for pedestrians. That's probably the biggest thing. And I think that's one thing the hospital saw as a benefit for their employees that are crossing over to the east side. Is it definitely cleaned it up a little bit with lining up the pedestrian crossing.
Because there is a pedestrian crossing on Columbus that goes into that parking lot that they use. So the one already exists. And then going from north-south on the west side of Columbus, there's already a crossing walk there.
Correct.
I'm just thinking,
it's always best to put the pedestrians as close to the intersection as possible. With these offsets, it's got them offset quite a bit off the intersection. And I mean, it is what it is. It's certainly not a necessity. Again, just something that's been brought up a number of times over the years. In fact, it was looked at back in 2012, but back in 2012, when we did Second Street, it was going to be quite the endeavor to deal with the county and add it in, et cetera. So.
I just don't see that it really gains us a whole lot, but then I have a rather untrained eye from an engineering perspective.
It does help to align the lanes, traffic lanes, better, because some of the confusion now is when they come from the east or west.
Right.
They don't know if they should turn on a blinker because they're gonna continue on to Second Street.
Right.
Either direction, so just having those lanes aligned helps that.
But
They know where they're going, they don't necessarily need to turn on a blinker to follow the same lane they're going.
But they're not really aligned.
Well,
I personally would still use a turn signal, because if I'm on Second Street and I'm going to go south on Columbus, or cross it over rather, I would still use a signal to tell the person that I'm gonna be going into their lane. It's just like using your signal in a roundabout to let people know that you're going to be exiting a particular, so
But by statute, you don't need to use a blinker in a roundabout.
I know that, it's a courtesy,
Because of
yeah.
the short distance.
Yeah, yeah, but as a courtesy, it helps with traffic flow. But yeah, I'm sorry, I guess I just don't see that this gets us much. So, those are my comments.
Chris, have we done any traffic counts or anything on it? I don't use it as much as Maggie, it sounds like, so I don't know what the counts are, but I would have to agree with her that before I spend $300,000 extra dollars of the taxpayer money, I wanna, to Maggie's point, it doesn't seem like we gain a whole heck of a lot, and every time I have used it, it's not that confusing. I know it's not ideal, and might really irritate people more that use it more often, but, do we have a traffic count? I mean, how many cars are we talking? I don't,
No, we don't, and it's under, it definitely is a lower volume, at least lower volume to the east. It's certainly not a low volume, that low volume to the west. There's greater counts on to the west. I can certainly get that, but Columbus is certainly a higher volume road for the city. Second Street West is a higher volume for the city, for a city street. I do not have a cost estimate on it, but it's certainly far from 300,000. The number you just mentioned, it's probably closer to 100,000 or less.
oh, did I read that wrong? I thought on your page 2 here, you have the sum total of this project. Is that the entire Columbus thing?
What I did is just for
Yeah,
your,
just
for the sake of,
designs.
that's the total of all the engineering.
Oh, okay, all right, so I misunderstood that then.
Yeah.
And just to let everybody know, when I go across right there, see where 209 is, their driveway is way back there. I've gotta get off on that driveway, go up the street, and then that's how I get on that other sidewalk.
Gotcha.
So pedestrian crossing works out good for me, but
And that's gonna be improved.
like she said, 100,000 to 300,000, I don't know, it's quite a bit.
Well, it's probably, again, I have not estimated it, but it's probably less than 100,000 to add it in. And the way again, with the county's funding on this project, the county's not contributing to this, but with all the funding that's available from the county and the assessments, is probably nearly completely paid for. It doesn't mean that money can't be used elsewhere, but again, this was available for this, I guess.
Any other comments?
I have a few questions, Chris, if I could just rattle off a few quick ones. There's, we have a copy of the letter that you'd sent and refers to 3 concept sketches. Can you comment or show us what the other sketches that were not chosen as alternatives?
I don't have them readily available. Both of them, one was a mini roundabout,
Okay,
and it took up too much space, and we felt it was definitely overkill for the intersection. And the other one was a slightly different angle that had a little less impact, but we felt this one by far unanimously was the best scenario that everybody agreed to when we met with staff.
okay.
So it'd take me a bit to pull those up, but that's what they were. It was 2 offset or angled intersections, and one was a mini roundabout that we looked at.
Okay, and then visually, to me, it still appears that the roads are offset. Am I accurate in that?
Well, the lanes, the key is that the lanes are lined up, and we probably will, under the recommendation of the traffic engineer, they're recommending that we will stripe the approach to the intersection. So there'll be a yellow line that'll probably just be as we approach the intersection. That's to keep the cars lined up. And the way the lane dimensions work, 14 feet is a driving lane. So as you enter come through the intersection, you're in a driving lane with no parking. 19 feet on the other side allows for a driving lane and for parking, and room for a right turn, etc. So, and then for the traffic that is coming westbound through the intersection, again, they'll enter just a driving only lane that will widen out to, a parking, or in this case, it'll be a patient drop-off area and we're showing it with a kind of a protected curb. So as the traffic's going through, the cars that are pulled over or parking or are doing drop-off are protected behind that curb.
The crosswalks that you mentioned, are they all going to be perpendicular, or are they, any of them diagonal?
Some of these, like here, would be slightly diagonal on both the north and the south legs of Columbus. But we try to get them actually as perpendicular as possible, which is within reason. And again, we're working both with we're obviously a different intersection. So the preferred is usually is a perpendicular. The other is to maintain your straight through on your sidewalk corridors. So again, the sidewalks on the east and west side of Columbus will be straight through. The crossings here at from east to west will be a little bit at a skew, but they'll be a little bit, closer to intersection, a little bit closer to perpendicular than what they would be today.
The perpendicular nature of the north and south probably is not an issue, but it just seems to me that you're going to be stopping your car well in advance of the intersection for a crosswalk, then needing to creep forward to approach the intersection. But it's not a big enough distance that it matters, I imagine. Is that correct?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So that's the balance act. It's the balance act for the traffic that has to stop for the crosswalk, as well as for the disabled user. You want to have that intersection as close to perpendicular as possible. So again, it's kind of a balance act in deciding where's the give and take at. And that only affects this east and west crossings here on the north and south legs.
The patient drop-off, in the initial discussions with the hospital, is that thought of as being the pickup location as well? Because we have a lot of issues with the pickup right, in my mind, with that area right now, because there's no crosswalk right by the door that's further over, I think, and people pick up their loved ones there when they're not necessarily supposed to be doing that, but. And I know it's been an issue myself with family members, but, so is the hospital thinking that would be the pickup area as well?
Yeah, and I don't know if Ken can answer this better than I, other than they have submitted, late last year, they had submitted some preliminary drawings of looking at some ped ramps because they wanted to, I guess they're looking at trying to improve the drop-off situation there, but I don't know the circumstances, other than this is something they've seriously been looking at.
So they would move the,
No, I think they would use both.
So you have the emergency area on
Yep.
the west side of the building, this would be more for your general.
Specialty.
Specialty type.
That's what they told
so
me.
there would be no place you could drive in for pickup then?
Well, you could pick up at the same location. It would be, out of the lanes, you can either drop off or pick up there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is the hospital actually gonna change their policy and actually do it there, or with this change?
They have already been asking, cause I dropped my mother off there and it's a bear right now, because it's almost straight up from the.
Would be nice to have that in the conversation if it gets that far. This improvement then, is there other utility issues that wouldn't need to be addressed except for this alignment issue?
In terms of sanitary sewer, water, and storm sewer, we would be doing something regardless. It's just a matter of what geometry of the road are we fitting it to.
Okay.
There are a lot of private utilities in the area, and we've already met with them to understand what would need to be done, and for the most part, we can accommodate it. When we have to acquire additional easement, for example, in the southeast quadrant, that'll address any space they need to move any utilities that are going eastbound on Second. So we've pretty much addressed that.
Okay, this is my last question. There's Scott County officials in the room, so I have to be careful how I word this. But So did I hear you say there would be an approximate city expense of 100,000, or was there a number that you kind of tossed around in your mind?
Yeah, I just pointed out that it's not, we have not done the cost estimate on it, and that it's definitely not 300,000. It's probably closer in the ballpark of 100,000 plus or minus. We certainly will have more information on that cost as we get into it. And again, this is not a county contribution to the realignment. They would only be paying for to the radius points on the intersection. The realignment would be all city costs, but again, the way the funding on this project works with all the sewer, water, county contribution, what the county's going to pay for in assessments, there's actually some funding, reserve funding that most of it should cover this cost. The balance of that was going to go into 499 fund.
Okay, so originally we talked about that there would be no burden on the city levy, so you still feel with this change, it won't affect that the city budget would be
Pretty
affected?
confident it won't affect the city levy, that it'll be from some of those reserve funds that come out of 490, or would have gone into 499, or would be available from the fund 499.
And I thought that was the last question, but it wasn't. Just to piggyback, Sean and Maggie, the improvements, if a taxpayer asks, are the improvements worth the cost? How do you answer that?
Is that question's for me?
Yeah,
Well, of all the offset intersections in town, and I guess the chief or Ken or Matt could maybe chime in better, but for all the offset intersections in town, this is probably the worst
okay.
to deal with.
And you feel this would be an improvement for safety?
Safety, probably more so for pedestrians than for vehicles, but yeah, I think for vehicles, I think it's probably not a big change, but mostly it's going to be for pedestrians.
Thank you.
Finding the intersection and the traffic flow
Thanks.
east and west.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, we have a resolution in our packets to approve approve ordering this. Oh no, we don't. That's the next line. I'm sorry.
Yeah, amendment to the engineering
It'd be
agreement.
yes, amendment to the engineering agreement.
If you are in support, I guess first in support of this proposal to realign that intersection.
This wouldn't slow down the project if you were to get us the total number that you're looking at, and maybe we could see the other designs, what were there that.
Yeah, it would, because we're expecting to be back in 2 weeks with, to approve final plans. Or we postpone the, postpone approving plans and add for bids. But at this point, we're trying to stay on schedule and be back in 2 weeks. If you want to hang on for a second, I certainly can bring up the other intersection options.
I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if the rest of the council is, but mine was more the money issue. That what is the total cost of it? And
I would think a mini roundabout would be more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been certainly been a lot more.
yeah, and I can see where that would be almost too much overkill.
So,
Hey, Mayor, if you have a second.
yeah,
So, on the street, when Columbus North was starting to be talked about, the very beginning phase is, how can we improve this for the residents of the city of New Prague? Safety concerns, sidewalks, all those items. This intersection has been talked about for years upon years. We do get calls about it that the sight lines are horrible. You don't know if if they're heading west on 2nd Street towards the hospital. People don't know if they're going straight down 2nd Street. Are they taking a left? So when we looked at this, it is kind of a nightmare when it comes to crosswalks for pedestrians. And two, it was in the very beginning stages, I told Chris, can you please look at options on making this intersection better? I feel like we're been very lucky that we haven't had a bad accident there when it comes to vehicle or pedestrian. Cause when you're turning onto Columbus, you don't know if you're taking a right down Second Street again, and now you got pedestrians crossing, and it is hard to see. So in the very beginning stage, I said, we worked on a couple mini roundabouts on Main Street. Would that work here? Right away when he popped it up in mine and Ken's eyes, I know me and Ken worked on it very closely together. That's not an option. That would not work in this area. But could we make a 10-degree angle to realign these a little bit better so when that vehicle's heading west or even east, they're angled to go across, and then they can use their blinker to go right or left. And then the pedestrians at that time know exactly where these vehicles are going instead of guessing. Are they going straight? Are they turning here? So in the very beginning stage, this is an intersection we looked at, said, how can we improve this? Because this is the improvement we gotta, if we're gonna do it, it's gotta be now, because that intersection is not changing for another 40 years. So this is the time to really dig deep. So we worked with the hospital. I think we get emails daily from the hospital. They're all on board. Their big concerns were pedestrian crossing and how can we improve it. As soon as we brought it up to the resident at 209, I thought there was gonna be a little bit more kickback, but she was all on board right away saying, you gotta make the improvements you need. I sit at the street every single day. I can see what you guys are talking about. It can be very confusing. She said, shockingly, last year we never had one close call with Second Street being the detour out on Main Street. But she said she was just waiting for that moment to happen. So that's how we got to this point where we're at right now. Is in my eyes, I don't think for the project that we're doing, the $15,000 roughly for engineer fees and roughly, again, we have a rough number of maybe $80,000 to $100,000 to improve this intersection. And in my eyes, this is a great improvement for the next 40 years. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, you sold me, Matt.
I think one thing I do like is that the Mayo Clinic Health System sign would be moved, because that is right in the line of your eyesight when you're going east on Second. It does block the traffic from those traveling south on Columbus.
Okay.
Okay. With that, I would take a motion to amend the engineering agreement.
So moved.
Second.
And Sean seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the final plans of the Central Plaza.
Good evening. I don't know if you can see me, or hear me. This is Karen
can see and
Luger,
hear you.
landscape architect with SEH. We had met back in October with the concept plan for Central Plaza, and today's goal is to have you approve the final plans and specifications so we can go out for advertisement for bid. And so I'm going to share my screen here so everybody can see the concept plan to revisit. The goal of the Central Plaza was to create a new space for the community in downtown New Prague, and then also create a framework for future public art to be incorporated into the space. And so this is the concept plan. And then here's some images that we had produced earlier in the fall. And I would say the final design has held pretty closely to the concept plan. This is just, the cover sheet for the plan set, which kind of highlights, all the different components that went into this project, not just landscaping, but also the pavements, the parking, site features, getting the Verdant clock installed, which has been already fabricated and has been in storage in New Prague. And so here's the plan, the final plan, layout plan. And with a few minor changes, for example, we're not including waste receptacles within the plaza space. A couple of existing streetscape ones are going to be moved into the corner of the plaza, so it'll be usable by the plaza. The other piece that changed, instead of using wood benches, we are using metal benches, just for reducing the possibility of vandalism in the future. And so The plan, still has the concrete plaza space, the planting beds around it, accessible parking. There are a couple pieces, the striping for the parking and the signs for the parking are going to be done by the city, and then the electrical is all going to be done by the utility commission. So those items were pulled out from the project, but everything else is part of the Central Plaza construction and landscaping project. And then this is just the planting plan. So overall, as I said, the final design is really closely matched to the concept plan that was presented back in October. And so we are looking for approval to move ahead with getting the advertisement for bid and getting a bid date of March 10th, 2022. And I can take questions if there are any questions.
Does the council have any questions?
I do for Ken, though, not Karen so much. Where are we on the Pioneer, that 18 inches, that there was the misalignment that I think we gave Mike Johnson that
Yep.
we wanted to kind of clean that up, just,
So right before the end of the year, we had, SEH go back and actually did, a certificate of survey. So we have the legal description, we have everything to Scott Riggs' office. We're initially trying to get that wrapped up right before the end of the year, and with the holidays and everything, it just didn't pan out. So, he's drawing up the, deeds and everything on that, so that'll be back to the council. I don't have an exact date for you, but it's in process. And obviously, if this is approved tonight, the owner of the Pioneer wanted to see the final version of that, and I was gonna weigh into that, but we already had in there, with the existing, purchase agreement that we had and, the encroachment with, the owner there, that we could put a mural on the wall, so we'll probably address that specifically, just to clarify that, if we're doing stucco or in the plans here, that he should be okay with that, I would believe, and we've had conversations back in December now on that, but,
okay, so you guys have been following up on that, because I
Yeah.
haven't spoken with him since he called me initially, but,
Yep.
and he was very amenable. As a matter of fact, he was gonna pay all the costs, any legal costs or whatever description, just,
Correct. Yeah, there's roughly $3,500, I think, in the
Okay.
legal to do the land.
and then whatever that 18 inches of,
Correct.
okay,
Yep. So we were in contact, probably the third week in December, most recently, but.
great, okay,
Yep.
thank you, that answers my question.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a general question, do you feel that this is gonna come within the budget that we provided, that once it's bid out?
Right now, our estimate does have this project below the budget, but again, some items have been pulled out from that. Right now, we're estimating 162,000 for this work, and that does not include the electrical or the striping. So there are some components, and also just given the nature of how things are with availability, there could potentially be, higher numbers. And what's interesting about this project is that it's a combination of it's not just a landscaping project, it's not just a concrete project, it's both. So there's other components. So, there might be a better chance of getting the numbers to even out and be close to what we are hoping for.
The amount we set aside is much more than that.
It was 175.
175,
For the
yeah.
construction.
Thank you.
And that was included in the bond, if you remember, the Wall Street project.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I take a motion to approve the plans and specifications and order advertisement for bids.
So moved.
Maggie made the motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Sean seconded it, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
It's gonna look nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have Commissioner Bricky and County Administrator Vermillion. Hi,
Hi, how is everybody?
good, yourself?
Good, thank you. Good to see friends and some of you I haven't met. I'm Barb Weckman Brecky, your County Commissioner for District 1. District 1, of course, includes the Scott County portion of New Prague, as well as all of Belle Plaine, all of Jordan, a precinct in Shakopee, and 7 townships. So everybody, of course, wants the same thing and is happy with it, without, no. Good to be here. I'm gonna go through some slides about the transportation sales tax, but before I do, I want to address a few items that you guys brought up 2 weeks ago at your meeting. I think some really important items. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'll come anytime. So let me know. My number's on the county website. It rings to my cell phone, answer it all the time. My email's there. And probably more important than me is, you know, if there's questions for staff, staff is very willing to come. I think, Councilmember, you brought up about SmartLink and transit, and there's definitely some things going on that over the years we've worked on, because New Prague and Belle Plaine are kind of in a different place for us, because you're not taxed by the Met Council, so we don't have that same thing, but we've worked hard to coordinate with LeSueur County and provide those dial-a-ride services. Actually just heard from staff today that we solved another problem on an issue where we had to go into, you know, Scott to LeSueur County and back, and some of those issues. We also have a new initiative in that area called Hop Scott that we're using in Belle Plaine, and I think with COVID and administrator change, it wasn't something that New Prague was interested in at the time, but if you are, we really would like to introduce Hop Scott here, and that's a transit van provided by Scott County, scheduling provided by Scott County, and then we work with volunteer drivers. So just anything, libraries, transit, reach out and we'll get here and have some presentations. But on to the transportation sales tax. So this is now it would be my 6th year in office, and that was a big deal at my first election because the board prior to me voted in the transportation sales tax for 7 years, and lots of people were asking questions, and I came into it being pretty cynical. Really, do we need another tax? I'm not sure if I support it, but it was in place when I came in, and I'll tell you over the past years, if you can appreciate taxes, I guess I appreciate this one more than some others. And I think 2 of the issues about that, I think it was you, Councilmember Wolf, brought up 2 weeks ago. One is, it's one of our only taxes that we have control of as a county. I'm sorry, Leslie Vermillion, County Administrator, is here. I know you said that, Mayor, but I just talked big picture. We're so lucky that she was our Transportation Director before she was Administrator, so she'll get to your detailed questions later. I'm just kind of like the opener. The sales tax, especially Scott County being so unique, where we do pull in an awful lot of folks from outside of our county who use our roads, wear and tear on our roads and our resources, it's one way that they at least pay a little bit towards them. So that I've been much more convinced of over the years as we see how much some of our entertainment venues like Renaissance Festival, Valley Fair, Canterbury, those goers from outside the county contribute to this tax. Second is, I do really think it, and this will be to Councilmember Ryan's point, it allows Scott County to invest in some really regional corridors that, frankly, you're correct, are not our responsibility. They tend to be the state's responsibility, but as history has shown us, and the state, you know, their MnDOT's shown us in their budget, it wouldn't have happened. And so on that level, I totally agree with you, but on this level, I'm trying to make sure we do what we need to do here. So I think our slides are up. So transportation tax, and of course, it's allowed by statute. You talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Really is the expected outcomes are to enhance the safety for all transportation modes. That's a big part of it. And if you look at the investments we've made so far, safety's been key. To really improve mobility and support economic development. I think, and we'll get into it later, where those projects are, and if I'm in your chairs, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable not seeing many dots around this area, but it's really mobility improvements. And I'll say that I probably have heard from just as many folks from New Prague as Belle Plaine who say thank you, because as they're going to work, or at least they used to be going to work before COVID, it's really cut a lot of time off of their commutes. And we all know we want people to be back in this town, to be invested in school activities and families, and if we can cut time off of commutes, that's good. Last week, I actually heard from a local farmer here who he feels like when he makes trips to the Port and Savage, the 169-41 intersection has cut a half hour off of each trip. So again, they're not right here, but I think they're impacting, that mobility is really impacting residents in New Prague. And then to enhance transit services. And again, I talked a little bit about the unique issue with New Prague being straddled over those two counties and not part of our Metropolitan Council taxing district, that we're trying to be creative to do that here also. So here's some direction we've heard from the other jurisdictions so far. I don't have a count, but Leslie will tell us soon. I feel like most of the other cities and townships have indicated either that they have already approved the resolution or they're going to. So, but here's some of the comments that we've heard. First of all, let's not let it expire and then start it up again. That would be the worst thing for our businesses who've already programmed in this sales tax, that type of thing into their programs, all that. We've heard the feedback that we should keep it focused on these regional projects that Scott County couldn't do on their own. It would take 3 years of our budget to ever do it if we, that kind of thing, to focus on those projects that do benefit the whole county. Pretty much consensus on the whole, the outcomes of mobility, safety, and economic development. There's been some talk about complete what we've identified already in these high traffic corridors. And then there's some people who say, well, we want to see some of this money going towards more county highway investment, and that's something we are starting to look at. And there's some room for that. There's some limitations in statute, but there's some room for that. Dial-a-ride service and transit facilities, people still generally agree with using some of these tax dollars for that. It's a very small portion of it, but it's the portion that allows us to do things outside of that metropolitan taxing area, to do things outside of regular daytime hours that help support our weekend and our evening services. We've had a couple of presentations over time to Scale and pretty much general support from Scale. And even though we've gotten pretty positive feedback on the sales tax, I think everybody's in agreement. Let's have a timeline. You know what I mean? Let's have a timeline. Before it was 7 years, we are proposing this time to do 10 years. We want an end date. This isn't a permanent forever thing that we're not going to evaluate and that we don't have to go through some pretty serious steps to renew. So this was the list that was adopted in 2015 when the sales tax, when we were first getting started. It shows the dots, show the places around the county. It lists out those projects. Some real variations. Some of those projects, you know, many millions of dollars, specifically 41, 169. Some a little less so. So you see, sorry about that. See those. The next slide, I think, is more telling. It shows us what's been completed so far from that list. So you see that a lot of it has been focused around that 169-41, a lot on 13 in various places, 13 and 42 and 13 and 21, really high traffic corridors. I think the most traveled intersection in the whole county, Leslie, is the 1342 intersection, right? And so it was many years of improvements there to make that done, but that's where most cars are, you know, the most cars travel through that intersection in the whole county. In the 7 years, we feel like there's been some really good success. 7 regional projects completed, 2 studies that were part of it. We have 4 remaining regional projects programmed. There's several transit projects funded, and then there's 5 projects that remain unprogrammed from the original list. Just because something's on the list doesn't mean we have to do it, but we can only do it if it's identified on the list. Is that correct, Leslie?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So we want to put more on there than we actually do. So, and I think this gets to council members Ryan's comments about who's responsible for paying for these things. This shows a little bit about where the money came from, and I am one of the first to say tax money is tax money. We all pay it. It kind of doesn't matter. But in my role as commissioner, I feel like I want to work hard to get money that we pay to the state and the feds back in the county. So, and this is one way we've been able to do that. We've really been able, by having those sales tax dollars, the dollars in red, to leverage federal and state money for these projects. So this shows a little bit the projects that we completed. They weren't funded 100% by that transportation tax. It really allowed us to pull in that other funding that frankly, I don't think most of those projects wouldn't have happened though with our 27%. We'd still be sitting and waiting because some of those projects were around for an awful long time. So getting to kind of addressing your questions from 2 weeks ago, you know, what's the benefit to New Prague? Why should we support this? And first off, and gosh, I keep picking on Councilmember Ryan, but I remember his comments the most. You know, if you do not support the resolution you asked, will the county heed that? Yeah, I think we will, but I think if you know, all but one jurisdiction supports it, we may go through with it. It's not like it's gonna stop it. We don't need permission. But we kind of want to know what folks are thinking. So this worked perfectly. It worked perfectly. You guys started talking about it. You said, where's that commissioner anyways? Let's get her down here and let's talk about it. So first of all, I think here's just a list of some benefits of things that I would say have benefited New Prague area. First of all, yeah, the commuting, your residents, employees commuting on those corridors, safer, more reliable commutes. As of 2019, and we just don't know how much this has changed since then and how much it'll change in the next 2 years, but over 50% of your residents commuted to either northern Scott County or across the river into the Twin Cities. So we know that a lot of your residents were driving on those corridors to get in and out of New Prague. The Highway 13 and Dakota Interchange and the 13 and 21 roundabout projects, really in all those projects, we were in serious and thoughtful conversations with Chart Industries to make sure that we designed those projects so they could move their product. And Mr. Mayor, I think you brought up the situation with the bridge and having that alternate route, and I went back to find out some more information about that. And my understanding is the bridge wasn't deficient, it was good, and there was no reason to replace it. It just wasn't built for that kind of traffic. So, and yes, Chart said, if you're gonna rebuild it, we'll pay to make it bigger the way it needed to be, but it just seemed wasteful to knock down that bridge, start over if there was no reason to do it for that. So that's where we tried to fix these other routes and make sure these other routes would accommodate Chart's needs.
Which bridge was that?
It was a bridge on 2.
On 2.
Oh,
Yeah. So again, if it would have been deficient, we needed to rebuild it, I would hope we would have said, hey, yeah, Chart, let's take your money and make it even bigger and big enough. But because I think, is it rated still 95% or something?
The sufficiency rating is like 96.6 on a 100-point scale. So the bridge itself is structurally good, in good condition. To just take it down did not make sense. When it has to be replaced, if there was still interest, they offered to do the widening to make sure that their equipment could get through.
Which is great, and we sure appreciate our partnership with them, and we appreciate how we've been able to work with them. Other, you know, like I said, the Dial Ride expanded service, and hopefully the new Hopscotch van program will benefit New Prague residents. And then just really the projects on especially 169 and 13, we feel help commuters, help businesses, help freight travel more precisely. Before we'll talk about the proposed map, but the other thing I want to bring up, and I know some specific projects were mentioned 2 weeks ago about, well, what about other projects in New Prague? The thing about getting in that transportation tax and being able to focus that tax on those regional projects, I think we feel really have allowed us to do more of what's really the county's basic foundational responsibilities with our county transportation dollars and levy money. And so in New Prague, we just talked about, Columbus, but there was the 7th Street in Columbus, 19 in Columbus mini roundabout that we were involved in. Near New Prague, there's been a couple projects on 15, 13 and 2. So what I think the transportation sales tax money's allowed us to do is really focus the county dollars on those county highways for projects that are county responsibility. We never, if we would have been siphoning off our county levy dollars to support those regional projects, all our county roads would be crap, this has allowed us to do that. So I think it's only telling part of the story if we look at the dots where the sales tax monies went. We should be looking at the dots, and wouldn't it be a a much more colorful map if we had the dots where just all the county projects have went. The other thing, I think in the sales tax money, we did the amount we can just to put more money into our general overlay, what's that called? Overlay and.
Your overlay program?
Yeah, overlay program. You know, I thought I would learn a lot about transportation when I came on the board, but Commissioner Beard and Commissioner Ulrich, they were really situated in that area. So my activities have been in so many other places, but I think I might be entering that realm soon. So the sales tax money, you know, it's just really allowed us to not siphon county taxpayer property tax levy for those projects. So you might agree with that, you might disagree with that, but I think it's just important to put that story out there and make sure we consider the whole picture.
But yeah, even though you have all this extra transportation money, it really hasn't slowed the growth on the tax levy and the businesses that have been paying the county taxes
Well,
and the assessments. So that's where
right. Sure. I guess I would say I think it has. I think if we look at our levy increase compared to LeSueur and Rice's, we've been below theirs. Our tax rate's below theirs. Both of them also have a transportation sales tax. I think they instituted it after ours, LeSueur County most recently, but both have that. I think you brought up Dakota counties. They're only a quarter cent. Why are we a half and they're a quarter? You know, I think it's hard to compare just because they're so much bigger. The money they're generating from their 25-cent sales taxes is huge, and yet some of their biggest projects don't cost any more than our biggest projects. But yeah, so I think at least my understanding, I don't have those numbers memorized, but I'm pretty sure the levy increase for Scott County this year was, you know, just under 4. I think both LeSueur and Rice were over 4. And I think tax rate, we usually see the comparisons. And again, if I'm in LeSueur or Rice, I'm gonna say the same thing I just said about Scott and Dakota. It's kind of hard to compare. It's really not apples to apples and oranges to oranges that way.
right, no, but I'm talking about just in the last 2 years, some of the businesses and the assessments that their businesses have gone up substantially. So even though the levy itself might only go up 4%, let's say, the valuation of their businesses
sure.
are
Yeah.
greatly
Right.
and then especially considering with the COVID outbreak
Right.
and everything and how business was so disrupted, it was a major concern. So.
Sure, and I think a lot of people think that our assessors walk around and be like, "Woo, I think we can move that one up." We are under pretty strict statute about how we evaluate those assessments. I know, especially for residential and business, and it has to be very true to what actual sales are. And our county can actually get dinged if we're not within that 90 to 105% when the actual sales come out, and we're not within that. It can cost all of us money. So it used to be, I think about when we bought our first house, we just assumed, and I know houses and businesses a little bit different, but I think the same thing goes. We assumed our assessed tax value maybe be like 70, 80% of what we could really sell it for. And that was just kind of the going thought. I think as the state has enforced that more, gotten more serious about that, everybody's assessed values are much closer to what you would actually get on the open market. Except lately, have you tried to buy a house lately? My daughter's been looking, trying to get her back into Scott County. Wow, the prices are out of town. So I think we're going to see, unfortunately for us, all of us who are concerned about that, we're going to see our values increase because actual sales are true to that. But again, it's been a crazy couple years. I have a small business too.
Right,
and
but
how do
unless
you-
the business sells, that still comes money out of their checking account. So whether it's,
Right,
5 times the value or not, it still
It's
is money that comes
legitimate.
out of their checking account, so.
no, I get that. Comes out of mine too.
unless it's-
Other thing, I think we did work hard to try and get the CARES dollars that were distributed through the county to actual local Main Street businesses. I don't have that number memorized, but it was published and I can get that, about how many businesses in New Prague took advantage of that. I know I spent time on the phone with several of them, helping them connect with folks and get that money there. Again, doesn't fix everything, doesn't change the fact that unless you sell your business, sometimes it's hard to keep things going. But I'm here to tell the story of the county and how we've done that. So questions, and I know the specific transportation ones Leslie might be better able to address, because you had several of those 2 weeks ago about specific projects.
Well,
One thing I might add to Councilor Ryan is the actual road and bridge levy for Scott County, the road and bridge construction levy, has been flat since 2010, I believe. So we have not increased the road and bridge levy itself for construction.
Excuse me, Leslie, could you come up to the microphone so
yeah.
others?
Sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're always telling people that too at our place.
For Councilmember Ryan's question, Scott County has not increased its road and bridge levy for construction since 2010. It has been flat. So we have actually not increased that. There would be a slight increase in some maintenance activities, but even there, the majority of that is on state aid, except the roads that are not state aid eligible within the county. So one of the reasons for the sales tax, which they estimate over about a third of people coming in from out of the county pay, is that tax then helps on the regional system versus increasing the levy to try to provide some of that match. So if you take a look at our road and bridge levy, you will see it's been flat. It actually peaked at just under 8 million in about $2008 or 2008. And today it's just about 4.4 million. They cut it when we hit the Great Recession, and it's never rebounded back. It stayed flat because we've offset it with other types of funding.
but certainly the county levy's gone up in the last 10 years, so
The
why
county
isn't?
general levy has,
Right,
but not the road and bridge
I'd love to
construction
speak to
levy.
that.
No,
Can I speak to
but
that?
my point to that is that's why we have a commissioners that should, if the levy's going up, shouldn't they be putting more money towards, out of that levy? Where is that money going?
You
Where
and
it's-
I are
if it's
gonna
not
have a
going to
great
the
coffee
states?
discussion someday.
I would love it, I would love
Perfect.
it.
We're
No,
on.
So,
Well, and I can't not have it right now. And I love, our representatives and legislators, and they do great, but just even over in the last 6 years, getting into 6 years I've been in office, but certainly the last 20 years, and I think it was you brought this up 2 years ago, or 2 weeks ago, it's those unfunded mandates. I mean, there's things that the county has to pay for that we didn't have to pay for, and it can be one resident. It could be a resident of New Prague who ends up in the state hospital in Anoka. And when they're ready to go, if we can't, it's county responsibility, find a place for them in the interim, they're staying there at a cost of, $10,000 a day or some astronomical number. Sometimes we end up having to pay $500,000 for one resident that you can't budget in, you can't plan. And so that's really changed. First of all, it's hard to budget. Second, the discretionary money we have, which some people would say 85% of the county budget is mandated services anyways, we're not working with a ton. We're really looking at trying to help families and individuals not get into those crisis situations. Because even just the humanity of it, we care and love these individuals and families, but the fiscal part of it is definite, and it's terrible on a jurisdiction and a local jurisdiction. So you probably have seen more of that, and some people say, Barb, what's the county doing in that business? You're just trying to expand human services, or what are you doing? I'm like, no, we're trying, the best thing we can do is to keep our young people employed and off of drugs, and when they have mental health crisis, keeping them in check so that we don't end up in those terrible situations. So that's exactly, I bet it, again, big picture, if we looked at a county budget 50 years ago and the portion that went to roads and bridges, it would be much bigger than it is today. And today it's really dealing with some of those human services things. And then in especially the last 6 years, we've seen the amount to operate the jail, dispatch, community corrections, and community corrections, probation, and the county attorney's office increase at a scary rate. And again, those are things that we don't have control of. I mean, they have to be done, we have to do them. And so again, one thing that we've been working on is even with probation and corrections, what can we be doing better and more efficiently to make sure these people don't go back to jail, don't go back to our court system? And what can we do to make the state pay the 50% share that they said they would pay years ago when they're paying about 23% now? So, see, I'm getting keyed up. I'm finally learning this job.
no, that's great, and I think people need to know that
Yeah.
more often, and that's kind of the reason I'm asking
Yeah,
these
no,
questions.
excellent questions.
So, can you explain this dial-a-ride and the
Sure.
New Hop Scott van program?
And again, big picture, and I do hope we can get Alan Herman or some of our other staff here for a more extensive workshop. But Dial Ride, the program's called Smart Link, is the Dial Ride program where, years and years ago, all the cities in Scott County opted out of being part of more the centralized Metro Transit. When I was a kid, the city bus came into Shakopee once a day or something like that. There's a dial ride service where you can arrange transportation from your home to, doctor's appointments, grocery store, work, wherever you need it. During the day, it's much more available. And then we instituted when the sales tax, extra sales tax started, transportation sales tax, we instituted some evening and weekend hours. It's much more limited. We only have one bus. I had talked to Alan Herman today just because I want to get a feeling of how many new Prague users use it. He said it used to be a lot more, and it's decreased a bit, though just today he told me about somebody that I happen to know here who was calling on behalf of his mom because she lives on the Scott County side. No, she lives on one side and wants to go to the others for shopping and stuff like that. And they finally, he just worked with the providers. It's kind of weird, but she has to take the LeSueur County bus is going to do it, and then we pay or something like that. So there's those services. They're used a lot by folks, senior citizens, especially once they don't have their license anymore, for doctor's appointments, things like that. Hopscotch, that's a new program where we have the van. We're providing the van and the scheduling, and there's actually volunteer drivers. So it's being used right now. I think Alan said just last week, Elko New Market's kind of bought into it, and they're using it, and they were delivering food from their food shelf, but he said half of the Elko New Market food shelf deliveries were to New Prague. So he says, well, I think they're benefiting. So it's just things like that. We're trying to be creative, and it's not a big pot of money, but we're trying to make sure that we're using that money that can be used through the whole county these areas in Belle Plaine and New Prague who don't pay into the, like the buses that go into the cities every day, because you don't pay that extra tax. Oh, and maintaining the park and rides. That's the other thing that I think we've been trying to do. And again, pre-COVID, we have some statistics, who knows what they're gonna look like later as far as the park and rides, especially in the Shakopee area, which used to really draw folks from the southern half of the county. Just keeping those up, like the blacktop and all that, that's money we've been using this sales tax for versus the general road levy.
What is the total of the 27% sales tax? I mean, dollar wise.
How much?
Do you have
Over the
just a
7
rough
years?
estimate? I'm just curious. Is it $1 million a year? Is it $10 million a year? I don't know.
We generate, so the 7 years is estimated to generate about 70 million. We started at about 8.5, and I believe right now it's a little over 11 million than what it's generated in like 21. It was actually higher than we thought, maybe closer to 12 million. So then that $70 million has generated, the 41 and 169 project alone was in excess, of 40-some million dollars. When you take a look at 282.9 and 169, that's going to be about a $40 million project. And so it has brought in an incredible amount of federal and state money that would have not come to this community without it. Or it would have taken us a lot longer to get there, and instead of doing so many local, we would have had to parse them out to those types of projects as well.
So 12 million in 2021, you said?
I think it's closer to 12 million in 2021.
It's a big amount.
So if we extend this again, I mean, I remember this when it came up in 2015. I was on the council at that time too. And, once you get that tax, there's no going back, even though when they tried to say, hey, we just have these 13 projects that we want to do. Well, now all of a sudden there's 18 projects, and it, instead of waiting till 2024 when the state might have done the Jordan interchange, we did it 3 years earlier, whatever. I don't know. I don't know where that money is all going for. I think really what the legislature did is pass it down to the local people, to the local politicians that have to answer to the.
I think if you were to ask any of the 7 metro counties, you would see that there is a much higher local investment right now in the trunk highway transportation program. There's no doubt about that, Councilmember Ryan. It's you asked about the trust fund and then where it comes from. So they're constitutionally dedicated, right? The gas tax, your license tab fees, and then your sales tax on your motor vehicle. So that does go, a bit goes to the state patrol and some for some off-road trails for, you know, ATVs and snowmobiles that buy gas. But otherwise, then 62% of that goes to the state, then plus their federal allocation. But as they've had higher and higher maintenance costs and a bigger system, it hasn't gone as far. And so to try to get done, especially in the metro counties, now you have 2 counties you're dealing with. In the metro counties, the suburban areas, to get those investments for those expanded type programs, based on the transportation plan of the region, it really does take a significant investment by the counties. It doesn't matter if it's Dakota or Scott or Anoka up on 10, or Carver over on 212, or Washington on 36. To keep those moving, it takes some leadership by the counties to make them happen. There's no doubt about it.
Well, so why 10 years? Why, I mean, the first time we did it was 7, now all of a sudden it's gonna be 10, and
So
I
We
just
debated
know
it.
that if I'm still around in 10 years, which I have no plans on, but
they actually
I mean,
debated
around,
it.
not at the council level.
They actually,
But,
well, I hope you're around, but they did debate it.
My other gig is a state plan.
You look round from
why,
here.
why can't we do this every 2 years when we could see that, you know, hey, these next 2 years, we're gonna take 22 million and we're gonna do this project and this project?
Because if you don't have the assurity it's there, it's hard to apply for the funds. And so when you know the funds are coming and you can plan for those and do the design, you have a commitment now, because the funds we're committing now are for 25 and 26. We wouldn't even be able to talk about that. And then if you want to start designing 35 and 2, we have to have a commitment with MnDOT that they know that match is going to be there. So this gives us a long-term vision and a commitment, which helps both from contracting standpoint and from our commitment to the state and our partners. You asked about, one of you asked about 35 and 86, and I love it. I wish that interchange was built tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's not within the 10 years, and that's why you don't see it here. You will see it in the Scott County Transportation Plan, and we would actually probably put some money away to sit and look at the right-of-way acquisition for it. But again, under the regional planning, it's very difficult for us to advance that. It's in our transportation plan. Might not be in the 10-year sales tax plan, but in 10 years, if this is still a good thing, and Commissioner Brecky will still be here, I won't, but I hope I'm alive just like you. It will be a good thing then to do and to evaluate what the right projects are. This really gives us enough money to finish 169, to get that big project on 13, and to move 35 and 2 forward. And if something doesn't move there, there's some money to look at 8 or 17. That's really what it does.
I think the federal funds we got last year, we had to start applying for them 2 years ago, and we got awarded them last year. We started applying for them 2 years ago, and we actually get them in our pockets in 2 years. So that's kind of the time frame too. And we did debate. There was some of our board who wanted to stay at 7, just to renew for 7, and some of us wanted 10. 10's what we proposed. Hopefully, I think you all do a good job and you should stay here, but I kind of think local seats should change. So I hope none of the 5 of us are here in 10 years and somebody else can make that decision on the board. But the other thing is, there's been a little bit of push to use this transportation sales tax to supplement our levy more, use it on county projects that are really county responsibility. I'm not, the reason I don't support that, not because I don't want to have a lower levy and want people to like me more, it's because I worry about what you're saying. Once you start doing that, it's even harder to get rid of this. If this tax is paying for the, the bread and the milk and the eggs, not the candy, then we're never gonna get rid of it. I don't wanna say candy, cause, the extras. So I'm kind of against that, even though some people would say, well, gosh, let's make the people from Valley Fair pay that. But if it's kind of true county responsibility, I like to keep it there, because the only thing that does is that ties us to this tax, or that if we do get rid of it, then all of a sudden we have a huge spike in our levy, which none of us want.
The other thing the commissioner wanted me to add, I believe that all of the cities we will have a resolution from. So we have 6 of the 8, I have to remember to say 8 now, 6 of the 8 cities in hand. Belle Plaine was approving theirs this evening, and then we were coming down here to chat with you about it, so.
Well, this has been very helpful.
Yeah, very helpful,
Yes.
because when you said the county transportation plan, if a person would have thought to look at that against this, that probably would have,
That helps me with, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Tricia.
go
That
ahead.
helps me one more thing, Mayor. This is not all of the county's projects. So
Yeah.
an Alton Avenue, a 15,
Yeah.
they would be in our tip. So if you were to look at the 5-year tip, and I know Ken's here, he's been around as long as I have. That Alton Avenue is one that's in our transportation plan. In fact, when we had discussions, I think even before the approval of the plan, we talked about maybe do we want to do that or 15? You wanted us to stick with Alton, that's in there. So someday when development comes,
Yep.
that plays into the other types of dollars we're talking about that would then go into that 10-year tip.
and that probably would have helped alleviate, I mean, that would have answered a lot of my questions if I would have looked at that against this, cause I guess when I looked at this, I thought that was it. You know,
Well, and some of that's COVID's fault. I mean, Mayor Novotny and Mike and I and Leslie, we met every quarter. We just got started and then this whole COVID thing happened and I think our next breakfast is on the calendar. But I think that's one thing. I'll come here anytime you want, but know that I have been and will continue to meet with the mayor and the administrator. I met him once, like, I think he was in the courthouse and I came by yelling about something, so it wasn't a good first impression. But we'll meet at least quarterly, and I think that's a great time to say, hey, the council would like you to come talk about this or that, or I think the whole council should hear about that issue, and we'll get that going more. I think Chuck and Mike just didn't want me around much, but no, I'm just kidding.
I
Just
always
kidding.
offered to buy,
Love 'em.
and you never take me up on it, so.
Could I ask a question on, the focus is mentioned being on regional projects, and just to clarify, or maybe you could talk me through, what's the definition of regional projects? And are you speaking of regional in the sense of Scott County, or regional in the sense of state of Minnesota? And then what qualifies, or what do you need to be able to qualify to meet the definition of a regional project? And so these things that you identified, you've come to the conclusion they're regional, but what about them made them that way?
Good question.
So it has to do with the function of the roadway. And so when you take a look at these, they were all principal arterials. Trunk Highway 13 through the ports of Savage, Trunk Highway 169, I-35, County Highway 42, County Highway 17, Marshall Road, and then eventually County Highway 8 is looked at a future principal arterial and of regional significance. Actually, that connection of 8 has a huge impact on the entire Scott County transportation system by giving people over here in the west access over to 35. The same thing as 86 eventually will do someday when somebody's around to make that project move forward. So in our definition, as we've used them, they have been by functional class. They've been the principal arterials. They're the roads that really move the freight and the economy within the county.
Do you have any close to New Prague that you would consider that?
Uh,
That meet the definition?
One
Because you're
six,
really talking about getting things out of the county, basically, or into the county.
within it, right? Internally moving it. So the closest principal arterial would be 169 over there at 19. County Highway 8 eventually will be one. 2 is not. Trunk Highway 19 is not. That's one of the reasons when we talk with the Met Council about County Highway 86, that extension, we run into issues with them and the expansion of a principal arterial system. I haven't given up on it yet. It is one of the few roads that goes from 169 to 52 and actually traverses the South Metro. But because of development issues and pressures, it's a very hard discussion. MnDOT itself is actually more interested in that discussion than the Met Council, and that's that line we kind of have to deal with in planning.
Well, thanks for answering the 86 question, because I brought that up and wondered about that. And you mentioned that it's not maybe 10 years further out, but it was in 2015, and so why didn't it move up?
Because we actually
scale.
learned in that one that we listed more and the expectations were they were gonna get built. So we tried to rein it into what was more realistic to actually do in the 10 years, yet give a couple in case something doesn't move forward so that one of the other projects could. And so it was a learning lesson
Sure.
from folks on, it was in this plan. And if you go back to that slide, I think it actually says, we knew it was a 15 to 25-year plan to do them all.
Okay.
But when something's
Yep.
approved, people
15 to
have
25
yeah,
years, yeah.
people have expectations. And so it was really a learning lesson for us to try to stay closer to what's realistic within that 10 years.
Well, thanks for your answer. I think 86 would have a direct impact in New Prague, and that's why I'm curious about it, but.
And I just want to clarify, because it took me a while to learn this, but Leslie keeps bringing up Met Council, and that state competitive big area here, a lot of that's awarded through Met Council, so that's why we care. You might be like, we're not in there, we don't care. Well, from the Scott County version, we need to care, because to get that big chunk of money, we need it to come through them and they approve it and award it. So that's, I got that part of it.
Who was the one commissioner that didn't vote for it?
Last time?
Yeah.
That was before I was on the board. I
Oh.
assume it was Commissioner Wagner who
Correct.
Was it?
represented this district.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Has this come up before the Scott County yet, or not? You're just taking the feedback from the cities first?
Yep, we are. We have a public hearing. Is it next? It's pretty soon. We have the public hearing where everybody can come, but we wanted to have the cities get in their feedback first, and been talking about it at scale for probably the last 6 months, where most of the cities have at least some representative to bring back. So that's where we've been kind of that second side, or whatever feedback we've heard has come from that.
Okay, and when was that
The
vote?
public hearing?
Public hearing is February 15th,
Oh, so it's our next meeting.
but that is where we presented it. It's been at scale.
Again, thanks for having me.
No,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
coming.
coming.
Thanks for the time.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, call about anything. Other people do, so. you guys can-
Yeah, please, if there's ever a question, Josh knows we'll certainly happy to come down and present or talk or explain a couple of those big
Yeah,
things.
no,
So
thank you.
love
It's
to do
very
it.
informative, yeah.
Did help, yeah.
great.
it
Thank you so much.
clarified.
Thank you.
Are you Lisa Freeze's, direct, or the boss then, or what?
Yeah, I guess she does report to me. Yeah, she's the transportation director. I don't know. I work with those division
That's what I
heads.
thought you were, but.
Yeah, no. I was the public works director from about '02 to '09. And then Mitch kind of took it over till he left to go to the state, and then Lisa, yeah.
All right, so any other discussion? We have a resolution in front of us. What's the council's?
Make a motion to approve the resolution 22-02-07-02.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Okay, the next item up is, the public is invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. They have 5 minutes, to speak. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak? You're gonna have to come up here for the microphone, Kay.
I'm getting a new knee again, so.
Are you?
Yes.
Sorry.
I'll hobble along. This goes back to Central Plaza, and I just want to make sure that, we all remember that if the bids come in under the projections, that money can be used for the plaza for 3 years, beyond the completion of the plaza. That was, something that we questioned, and Patty checked into it. And the reason I'm bringing it up is if there's money left, we have, somebody that's designing a metal sculpture that could be attached to the Pioneer Wall versus the mural, and it'll represent the creek and stuff. So I just
Cool.
want you to remember that. You can't go and party with our money.
I wonder, Josh, if we couldn't, when we accept the bid, once we come to accept the bid, then say that remaining funds is designated
Yeah.
to the park board for that purpose.
Yeah, I wouldn't see a problem with that.
So if you could prepare whatever
Okay.
resolution we would.
It'd be in the resolution.
And hopefully the bids will come in less. So thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kate.
Thank you, Kay.
Hey, can't, Doc spray some WD-40 in there or something for you?
The shoe collar's good.
Anybody else want to speak?
Oh, this is, Dennis wants to, just quickly. Dennis, came up with that design for the metal, and he'd be working with Stan Shetka, who is a professor at Estabas, and we are hoping some of the students will be able to work on it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I've been conceptualizing a wall installation that will be in relief form so that there will be portions that will come out forward into the space. It will not conflict with the vegetation or the tree plantings, as I asked Ken to provide me with some type of the side elevation of the Pioneer Bar. And the lighting, whether it comes from the top or the bottom, will accentuate the piece and create shadows, and we're going so what I've done is I've just begun the process of conceptualizing it. Each color represents a piece of sheet metal. Each piece of sheet metal will be treated differently. They will not be attached. Some will go forward, some will go back, so it's three-dimensional. And a relief is essentially a sculpture that is attached to a common point, which in this case would be the wall of the Pioneer Bar. So, as Kay mentioned, Stan Shetka is the professor of sculpture and art at Gustavus, a former student of mine, and so he and I are collaborating on this.
Good.
And so, my idea is to talk to New Prague and some of the discussion regarding the Raven Stream and some of the elements we have discussed in the past that were not considered, such as the floor installation of bronze and so on. So cool. Once I get this, meet with Stan, we're going to be meeting a week from this coming Wednesday. And so if you could put us on the agenda at some point to bring this forward to the park board or the city or however you want to do it. And once the budget is finalized and so on, we know what we're working with. I don't charge for my design fee. This is a gift to the community if it's approved, but there will be materials at cost, and we want this to be something that the city is proud of, and something that will be an aesthetic contribution to the plaza, so it doesn't interfere with the floor plan of the plaza.
Cool.
Any questions?
No.
Oh, look, they're pretty exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
And Kay, thanks.
Thanks, Kay.
Have a good night, guys.
All right, we're gonna move on to the public hearing in regards to liquor license fee proposals. So with that, who's gonna be presenting?
That would be myself, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
So, as you all are aware, last year we lowered our liquor license fees by 50% to help businesses that had to offset basically COVID struggles. And as part of the state regulations on liquor license fees, we are not allowed to raise any rates without a public hearing. And so we discussed this about a month and a half ago, and we did send out a notice to all liquor license holders that we would potentially be raising fees from what they were last year, which was 50% of what normal is. So when I brought it forward, the memo before you this evening shows the fees from 2020, since those were kind of more of the normalized fee levels, and then the proposed fees. As you can see, most of the fees are not changing off of what 2020 was, but I did, on comparison of other cities, not only in Scott County, but also LeSueur, propose raising 3 of the fees. The on-sale liquor license by $300 to $3,000. That particular fee has not actually changed since the early 2000s, I believe. Off-sale liquor by $50 up to $150, and then on-sale wine and strong beer by $100 up to $500. Other than that, I propose that the other remaining liquor license fees are unchanged. If you have any questions, you can definitely answer.
I do real quick.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm opposed to the increase, since it's been 20 years since it's been done last, but why didn't we just go across the board with a 10% or a whatever? I mean, why did we target these 3? That's the question I'm gonna get from the Knights of Columbus and the ones that are gonna be.
Yeah, so part of it was when I was kind of having an overall fee discussion with our attorney, Scott Riggs. was that there are some fees that are more difficult to quantify necessarily what a city may put into them. Liquor license fees being one of them. A lot of the time that a city may put into individual fees is when you get that application in, then during your investigation. So he did recommend if there's any potential changes you'd have, kind of look around and see what other cities are doing. And so when I look, most of those are pretty in line with kind of what is common across Scott County. And it was those three that kind of stood out. The on-sale liquor actually is still a little low for what a lot of Scott County does. I think Belle Plaine is about the only one that has a lower on-sale liquor license. And I can pull those up here real quick too. And then the other two were similar, is just trying to bring those kind of more into line a little bit of what's similar across all of Scott County.
Sure, but, all right, so how can I explain that to them, that theirs is going up $300 and, the tap room isn't?
Yeah.
There is no increase there. I mean, I just wanna make sure I understand that. So it's more of the fee, or the background check and is much more intensive for a strong license than it is for a tap room or just strong beer and wine?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the background check is necessarily that much more intensive. A lot of it, I think, comes down to the standardization and how those things have been seen, for better or for worse. I mean, maybe Jim could speak more to if he knows any specifics about background checking on whether it's a what would be considered a bar versus what would be considered a tap room. But these particular increases themselves were really based more off of standardization across the county. That doesn't mean we couldn't leave them kind of where we were at, but I know I was just trying to level things out a little bit with kind of our surrounding cities.
Is tap room defined as someone that brews beer and serves it, or?
Yeah, I can address that. So brewer's tap room is specifically like a Giesenbräu that has production capability, and then they're able to distribute, so they're not able to have hard alcohol
Okay,
or any other alcohol other than the beer that they brew on their premises. And that's just a Minnesota.
yeah, the
statute.
nature of the operation is different then. So, I appreciate you checking with other municipalities. Are the ones that you didn't change then, if you would change them, you're saying that they would become outliers then?
Not yet. They might be little outliers. I know that tap room one I think was actually pretty common across most cities. All kind of have the exact same tap room fee.
Some of them are designated by statute also.
Okay.
And temporary liquor license, is that like when St. Wentz is a beer garden? Is that what that is? Is that pretty standard fee as well? It must,
Yeah, I was actually pulling them up right here.
Yeah.
To see what we've got for comparisons. In terms of temporaries, so our temporary is actually a little bit high compared to the others. Most cities across Scott County are somewhere in the $50 to $75 range, and ours was coming in at $100.
So the on-sale wine and strong beer, that would be like Knights of Columbus, right? Is that, Ken, or maybe you could, or,
Is it?
Yeah, I believe they have that.
okay. So theirs is going up 25%, but the other liquor store, or the other bars are only going up maybe, well, I didn't do the quick math, close to 10%. So can you see
Yeah,
where people would be, how come mine's going up 25% and somebody else's is going up 10?
Yep, I can definitely see that. For your information, at the moment, we are actually the lowest across the county for that one.
Are we?
Yep. So Elko is 1,000, Jordan is 500, Prior Lake is 2,000, Savage is 850, And then Shakopee has some formula for theirs that comes out. Belle Plaine actually does match us, it looks like right now, with $400 on that particular one. But I can see where you're saying, yeah, why is theirs going up 10% and ours is going up
Right.
25%, yeah.
Since you have those pulled up, just so
Yep.
I can say, hey, when they,
And I can email you guys these findings too, if you'd like me to.
oh, sure, that might be nice, but I'm just kinda curious. So what's the on-sale liquor license in Shakopee or Prior Lake or?
Yes, so on sale in Prior Lake is $6,600.
Geez, okay.
And it's $5,250 in Savage.
Jeez.
And Shakopee's is somewhere between $3,700 and $10,000, depending on the floor area.
Wow.
Wow.
And I guess for closer in size, Jordan's is $3,500.
Okay. Well, that helps. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise,
And so with this, there wasn't necessarily an approval, as the next item is
yes,
actually.
so this is actually the public hearing, so.
Correct.
If there's anybody in the audience that wants to address, this, public hearing, please approach the podium and state your name and address of record. And, you have 5 minutes to speak. So is there anybody that wants to speak? Going once, going twice. I will now close the public hearing and we'll move on. So now the next item on the resolutions is this amending the adoption of the 2022 official fee schedule.
Yes, so this amendment came about not only due to liquor, but at the official adoption of the fee schedule, there were some questions wanting staff just to double check to make sure there weren't other fees that maybe could be adapted to make sure that we are, I guess, for lack of a better word, being more fair with how our fees are going on. So I did go through, the whole list is there. Highlighted in green were the ones that we changed this year in January, and then I highlighted the kind of changes I was proposing in orange there. Overall, staff did very well when they went through and kind of picked out making sure that we weren't overcharging. I know the last few years at the legislative level, there have been some representatives and senators who have been pushing bills to try to, for lack of a better term, take control away from cities because they felt like some cities were overcharging for fees. And so I wanted to be really careful with that we didn't put ourselves in that sort of position. In fact, I think later in our resolutions here, we'll actually be proposing a resolution supporting local authority in terms of those. So I did change some of them, but I tried not to change too many, quite honestly, because I didn't want to make it look like we were charging just to charge and make money off of these. So if you've got any questions, I can kind of answer them about what I was thinking on some of these orange changes or things that I didn't necessarily believe we should change.
Well, I appreciate the work that you put into it and that you made and the consideration that you've given to it to make the changes that you're recommending. I do feel there's a lot of room for change or increases, but I'm not advocating that we change or do anything else. I come from a background where we had functional cost analysis, and I worked with businesses, so a lot of them know what their costs are. So I think it would be nice if the league, or if we had more information to get better peer information, or that we could put into a formula that we can say this is our labor cost and therefore our cost to provide this service is this for a size of community. But it doesn't sound like we have that information, or the league doesn't do that kind of thing. So I think we're kind of dancing around sometimes about not wanting to do that because we think we're charging too much. But the fact that we haven't changed some of these for a long time, if you make the argument backwards with some of what you're saying. We're basically saying that we've been charging too much because we haven't changed. So it's kind of like, so that's why I'm coming to the point that we're kind of being very cautious and maybe overly cautious about some of these things, particularly in the planning and permit inspection areas. And I understand what your comments are about with the state of Minnesota and the Senator Dram's big changes he wants to make in those kind of things. So I understand the political part too, and to try to keep our cover about us and not change some of the thing, but just doing a napkin analysis on some of this stuff, we can't keep raising our cost of labor and things over the last 5 or 6 years and not think it doesn't change the cost of providing some of these services. So I'm not suggesting, I support totally what you're doing here, but I would like to continue to prod to think about those things in the future, about some of those things, because I do think it is a fairness issue about, not so much in the park area, some of those things. I think the residential people would support subsidizing some of those things, but if we're not keeping up our charges in some of these areas, it's just the levy is paying it then. So that's where I'm coming from. But I support what you've done and I support the changes you're suggesting.
I just have another quick question unrelated to the liquor part of it, but I was just looking and it just brought something back that I had somebody asked me and I couldn't answer it. And Jim, I'm hoping you can answer it for me. So when a police officer, and this was particular to the Braz Hotel, is there for an event, right? They're required to have a police officer on duty. I've seen the cars and stuff there.
They are not
Required.
to. They chose to do that for the first 2 years, 3 years they were in place.
Okay,
But then through COVID, we started back, but then they went another direction and hired private security present now.
okay. And could that private security be a New Prague police officer moonlighting or anything after, or?
With permission, they could be, but they chose a company out of Metro that are, I think, current law enforcement officers that do it on the side or do the scheduling and do it for them.
Okay. So the question that was raised a couple years ago, well, maybe a year ago, the last time, you're right, it has been a while since I've seen a New Prague police officer, but, so they were curious on, so they're using out of the $105 an hour that they would be charged with a police officer in a vehicle, does that go all to the police officer, or is it just their standard wage and then the rest goes to the city if they're using if gas is running and it's cold and they're sitting out in the parking lot, and how does that break down?
Yeah, because it was so near, I would have them take a squad car.
Yep,
By parking it on Main Street, it's visibility for us.
sure,
That, hey, there must be an officer someplace. I would do that, but, no, the per hour cost would cover their time and a half.
okay,
And then the rest the city would make from that.
okay,
Was it for 2020 or I think, I provided you a sheet of what we billed out for, tank transports, Bros Hotel, and then what the city made from that. And I think in the year that I provided it to you, it was like $6,000.
okay,
That the city took in above and beyond what it cost them.
okay, okay,
So yeah, some of that comes to the city that way.
okay, all right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to amend the adopted 2022 official fee schedule.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Maggie, seconded by Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the request for variance. Take it, Ken.
I'll
you
take that one, yep,
take
and
that
I do
one?
have a quick PowerPoint I will run through. This is a request for variance V5 2021 for front setback variance for a deck the front of this home at, on Third Street Southeast, 207 Third Street Southwest. Property owner was looking to have that front deck, allow the already partially constructed deck remain on that home at 21.5 feet from the front property line instead of the ordinance allowed 30 feet. We had this in front of the planning commission on December 15th and January 26th. And the reason for the initial tabling to the January meeting was to talk to the city attorney about if the variance would happen to be approved, if it would set any legal precedent. And the answer from the attorney was there's no legal precedent for that. However, from a practical standpoint, other people would see that and likely apply for similar variances. But as I noted at the meeting, and as the attorney noted, that we needed to look at the criteria for each variance request as they come in front of the planning commission and council, rather than assume that one was granted, you're gonna grant another one. So obviously, as we do with every variance, we look at the specific case in front of us at that time, and we review on the merits of the facts specific to the property. Ultimately, the planning commission did recommend to deny the variance request on a 5-0 vote. Couple of exhibits here to show you. The one on the screen right now, the green dashed outline's a little hard to see. That's actually the 30-foot setback by the ordinance. You can see the home is already within that. They had a previous just stairway and a small landing and a stairway down to the ground, which is allowed by the zoning ordinance for proper egress in and out of the home. They had taken that off in 2020 and started constructing this deck, led to obviously a citation of the zoning ordinance notice that they received at that time, and therefore ultimately led into the application for the variance. So this home, as I noted, and the home directly to the west were the two that are less than the 30-foot requirement to the street already, and then they're adding this 7-foot wide deck onto the front of that. So it really was an outlier in that neighborhood with that being added on there, and that was really the key discussion that we had. It just really fit the look and the streetscape with that being added on there. We also looked up and down the block, and this line was just showing the prevailing 30-foot setback and how all the homes, minus a couple of stairways, which again is allowed as an encroachment within the ordinance. This one was just far and away encroaching into that streetscape look along Third there. So a couple of photos we had, the partially constructed deck that you can see in these photos here, and it just really, not even having the railing on, you could really tell it was just stuck out like a sore thumb off the front of that home. Didn't fit in at all. Just a couple other pictures of that looking down the block each direction. See the homes here again. We do allow steps to meet egress to fit within that 30-foot setback by allowed encroachment per the ordinance. And then here's a couple of photos of the home with the old stairway on it. And that was obviously removed at some point in late 2020 when they started then following that to build the deck. So what we have in front of you is a resolution tonight to deny the variance. We had the applicant and his contractor at the planning commission meeting, and I think they understood at the end of that it would be recommended for denial here tonight, and they are working on a revised plan to either put a 3x3 platform with a stairway down, a 5x5 platform if they want to have an ADA ramp off the front was the other thing that they could do, and then if they wanted to have a seating area out front, they could pour a patio on the ground level. But those were the only options that would not require a variance. So that was where they had left it at the end of that meeting.
Okay.
Ken, why did it come in front of the council if we turned it down at the planning commission meeting?
We always, just per our review, we want to get the record and set that, close the book on the decision, make sure that we have the findings approved, and shut the door on the 60-day time period for review.
Okay. Well, I always thought that the person applying for, let's say, a variance, and if it was turned down at the planning commission, always had the ability then to go in front of the council. But that doesn't appear to be the case here.
Oh, they
so-
chose not to come to me.
Yeah, but I mean, so I was wondering why it even came up. I mean, I feel like I wasted
So
a
we need to
Tuesday
close the
night at
door
that
on
planning commission meeting when I was there, and we turned it down, and now it came back.
Yeah, we need to close the door on the review time period for the 60 days
Okay,
per
all right.
statute. Yep.
You know, when I look at
Because
stuff like
the
this,
planning commission does not have the authority to make a denial. It's their recommendation to the
Oh,
council.
okay, all right.
when I look at this stuff, I look at what used to be there. And, you know, the sidewalk that comes out of the driveway and goes up there, that's even with the end of the deck that they slapped in there. Isn't it?
Say that again?
See that sidewalk that comes from the driveway to the, where the porch that they used to have?
Yep.
This deck, this new one that they put in there lines up with that sidewalk.
Yeah, the outer edge, yeah, the outer edge.
So why can't they just grandfather that in?
Because they're expanding the deck in much larger than the platform that was there previously just for ingress and egress out of the home.
Alright.
It was an expansion.
Yeah, my answer was no anyway, but I just wondered what was there. You know, it's like that one that's 140 years old, we were talking about before. I mean, it looks like two buildings just kind of leaning in.
Yep.
Alright, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, does somebody want to offer that?
I'll move it.
Okay, Rick offers resolution 22-02-07-04 to deny the request for variance. Is there a second?
Second.
Bruce seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item up is the local decision-making authority.
I'll take that one, Mr. Mayor. So we have an agenda item in front of you tonight specific to kind of the discussion we had earlier about local land use decisions and some of the statute or legislature trying to take away some of our authority to locally control certain aspects of planning and zoning locally. Some of the bills that had been proposed in last session, and again, I'm sure will be coming forward this session, would be limiting the use of plan unit developments, which is something we don't use very often, but can be very helpful for coming up with land development plan approvals that'll, you know, obviously hold public open space and the use of homes and or other businesses in smaller areas so that we keep open space open, but some of those are seen by certain legislatures as a limiting factor in keeping things affordable. Another thing that was brought up and was proposed was City of Minneapolis was kind of the first to do this, I think, in the whole country, trying to force multifamily housing in single-family districts so that local control would not apply. I don't think we've ever been in support of that here in New Prague. I don't know of any other city outside of Minneapolis at this point that has even been in favor of that, but those are the types of things that have kind of been under attack in the past year or two, roughly. And there's many other examples of that that have been brought up. But in 2021, we had our resolution adopted to support legislation that would authorize infrastructure development fees, so we can charge developers for their impact in a new development for, you know, intersection improvements or utility improvements, that type of thing. So this is kind of a piggyback onto that for not getting our local zoning restricted further. League had put this out in a few of their last newsletters, looking for cities to adopt it, and basically just took and customized for New Prague to adopt that and hopefully continue to pave our own way in the land use arena. Look for your consideration on that here tonight.
Any questions?
No, I'll make a motion that we approve the,
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Sean, seconded by Maggie to adopt this local decision-making authority resolution. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the fire department.
Yes, I've got that item.
Okay.
As you may remember, at the November meeting, we did pass, to increase the pension benefit for volunteers from $37.50 up to $41.50. Myself being unaware of the full procedures, did not pass a resolution that would allow us to update the bylaws, which is what we should have done. So part of the resolution before you this evening is to formally update those bylaws. The other part of that resolution, I was made aware of by the chief that our current bylaws read that the officers will hold a 1-year term. Is that correct? And they have been for a while now holding 3-year terms informally. So this would update the bylaws to allow for that formality to take place, and we actually are then following our bylaws with the length of our officer terms. So,
Okay.
if you have any other questions, I can try to answer them.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution amending the bylaws.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Is there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, New Prague Fire Department appointments. Do you want to address that?
So as you know, we had 3 members retire in the last couple months. We held a application period, and we had our interviews here the last week. After the interviews, we're recommending the hiring of Luke Zwaber, Zach Meyer, and Chase Boothie. Luke Zwaber works at Tupi Insurance here in town, can make day calls, lifelong resident, graduate of New Prague. Luke also works on a family farm. Luke has a 4-year degree in accounting and finance from St. John's University. While attending St. John's, he was a member of their fire department for 4 years. While on their fire department, he was trained in Fire 1, Fire 2, Hazmat Ops, and First Responder. These are the same certifications that we require on our fire department. With Luke working locally, he will be able to respond to day calls, which will be a big asset, and we feel he'll be an excellent addition to our fire department. Zach Meyer works for Sklazacek Meats in New Prague as the manager. Zach has a long background in farming on the family farm west of town. Zach is a lifelong resident and graduate of New Prague. With Zach's farming background and his ability to respond to day calls, we feel he'll be a very excellent asset to our department as well. And then finally, we are recommending the hiring of Chase Boothie. He works for the New Prague School District as a teacher. Chase graduated from New Prague before obtaining his bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Stout. Chase has also obtained his master's degree in differentiated instruction from Concordia University in St. Paul. In the summer, Chase works for a local fertilization company, making him available for day calls in the summer. We feel that Chase will be another excellent addition to the fire department.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve those 3.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion, questions?
What's differentiated instruction?
That is a great question. That somebody in that line of work would have to answer, I think.
Yeah.
Is that all?
Yeah, that was.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank
Hey,
you.
Turbo, you should hit these guys up for chicken barbecue tickets.
Oh, I
too.
got mine
Here.
already. Yeah. Oh, it's at home.
Calling you a liar.
You wanna see my vaccination card too?
It's kind of personal.
The mandate.
Okay, appointment of building official position.
All right, I'll take that one. Back on January 18th, the council temporarily appointed Scott Sass as the temporary building official. Since that time, we obviously posted internally for the position, which is allowed by our personnel policy. We did have one application, which was from Scott as an applicant for the job. Scott's been with us since August of 2016, initially as a building inspection intern for 8 months, and then almost 5 years, it would be coming up 5 years next month, for the building inspector position that he's been in. Scott's application was reviewed. It meets all the position requirements and qualifications that are needed for the building official position, including his building official certification from the state of Minnesota, which he's had since 2017. And being able to also immediately gain what they call the Municipal Reserve Project Delegation. And you have to have a certain amount of experience and education to get that. And that was actually a requirement within 24 months of the job hiring. So he's able to get that on day one. So it was very beneficial as well. And as I noted, Scott's been here for over 5 years in the intern and building inspector role. Great relationship with city employees, contractors, and a very vast knowledge of not only the building codes, but our permitting and software system that we have in place. So I'm recommending that Scott Sass be hired to the building official position with a starting date of tomorrow, February 8th. Be placed at pay grade 14, step 2 on the compensation plan based on his qualifications and experience. Obviously, that would then create a vacancy in our building inspector position. We would look to immediately post for that position to hire a replacement for that position, if approved, to move him to the BO position here tonight. So stand for any questions that you might have.
I have one. Chad was the building official / fire marshal.
Correct.
Is this not the same thing?
This is not the same thing. So we went through and reappointed the position. It did not change the level of that. Obviously, we're looking at hiring Scott on the lower end of that position. One of the other special, not requirements, but desired qualifications is to get the certification to do some of those tasks. Myself and Scott met with Chief Rinda, what was that, last week, I guess, late in the week? And we're able to actually take over a lot of those duties with the experience that the fire department has. Scott is gonna start taking the training here shortly to get himself in that same boat, but basically at this point, we're not losing anything by not having that as part of that position, and we will continue to do fire sprinkler inspections on down the line that we have been doing. So, no change in our service we're providing.
Okay.
But I didn't quite get that. You're gonna be doing the fire marshal until we get the guy certified, till Scott's certified?
Yeah, basically, the credentials that Mr. Rinda has will carry us through in that interim. If we didn't have that, they would eventually take the projects back at the state level. And we don't wanna have that. We had that prior to 2015 is when Chad had taken a lot of that over, and the state didn't pay a lot of attention to projects going on in New Prague, so we wanted to have local eyes on that. So we'll be able to continue.
I got you.
I guess I'm not sure I get it. So the job description is not changing, but it'll
It's just
take him,
removing the
it'll take
title
him a
out of it.
while to get the additional certification then?
Correct. Yep.
So he just,
He's gonna be taking the class in May, actually, that'll
Okay.
get him to have that, so.
okay.
Then eventually you'll get the title.
I don't know that we
Or-
even need the, it was
or-
really,
okay.
it didn't change the scoring of the position or anything. And
Okay.
we want to be more collaborative with the fire department and, their role in this, so I think it's
Okay.
a good move to make.
Okay.
We're still doing the same work, but I think
Yep.
we
Well,
will
don't he
be
get a badge
collaborating
now? I
with
mean.
the fire department more than we have been.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I would take a motion to appoint Scott as the building official.
So moved.
I'll second.
There's a motion seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now you got this next one?
Yeah, so the next one, this is something also that we had taken over in April of 2015. It's called the Reserved Inspection Delegation Program, where we're able to take state inspection on schools and other public buildings like hospitals for some of the smaller projects. This was something that we weren't sure when we initially were losing Chad if we'd be able to maintain that, but Scott's experience and credentials allows him to continue that delegation. And without that, we would lose the revenue and the oversight and inspection on smaller hospitals, smaller school projects, and then our public buildings that we have throughout town. So Same thing that we've been doing before. The only reason we need to bring it in front of you is we have a new building official and they have to sign on that and be approved by the local governing body to continue to do that. So kind of how it works, the state continues to do their full plan review on these projects. We then are submitted that, we do what they call a cursory review, take a look, not as in-depth of a detail, and then we do all the inspections locally. So we maintain some of the revenue and basically projects we wouldn't normally get. There are higher levels you can do, that's usually kept for the larger cities, where they have more specialized staff to be able to, you know, babysit projects like that. So no change, and we can continue to operate as we had going forward, if this is approved tonight.
Make a motion to approve the municipal delegation agreement and authorize the administrator mayor to execute the agreement.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right. Appointment of Joint Powers Committee member.
Yes, I put this on the agenda as a placeholder. If you remember, I emailed you here about a week or so ago, discussing that Councilwoman Bass submitted her resignation pending us finding someone to replace her on the Joint Powers Committee. So I'd ask that you come thinking about who could replace. Also in that email, I did mention that our Public Works Director, Matt Rinda, had said that he would like to serve on the committee if given the opportunity. But ultimately it would be up to the council as to who they would want to appoint to that position. Of note, we do not necessarily need to appoint a council member to that position, because Councilman Seiler is on that, and our agreement says we must have one council member. So we are allowed to have, we can have another council member, or we could have a staff member or citizen of the public serve at the council's appointment. So I guess just looking for what your guys' thoughts are and who you'd like to appoint.
Does anybody on the council want to serve on that?
I got my hands full. If Matt wants to do it, I'm all for Matt.
So there's openings for 3?
There's one opening. So currently it's Rick and Ken
Ken.
are also
Okay.
serving.
Yeah, Rick Cannon. So it could be another council member, or you could do Matt.
I have no interest. I totally support Matt if he wants to do it. I'm a little concerned about his time and whether it's a good use of his thing, but if he thinks it is,
Well, this is
I'm
technically
totally.
not during my workday, this would be outside of my workday, so it's not affecting.
Well, if you say it that way, then I totally
I'm just being honest with you, it's not like
We'll
it's in the
support
middle
it.
of the workday or anything, this is actually after hours. If you have, if my kids were here right now, they would say, no, Dad, you're not
Yeah.
anymore. I'm not gonna lie to you, but, when Josh and Ken actually talked to me about it a couple weeks ago, this kind of stuff is right up my alley, the fitness center stuff. I'm a member of the fitness center, I have been on and off for 3 years. So yeah, this stuff is right up my alley. So
I move to appoint Matt.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve Matt. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
And again, thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
You hear that evil laughing in the background? Doesn't know what he signed up, doesn't know what he signed up for.
Can we get him on a plow truck then too in the middle of winter when it's 20 below?
Just in the evenings though.
Yeah, just evenings.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the scheduling of a vision goal-setting meeting.
Yes, we talked about this at the last meeting. I did include a calendar in your packet that may kind of help as to when particular dates are landing. At the last meeting, we kind of discussed going out to March at this point, which will allow me a little bit more time to make sure I get as much lined up as possible. But obviously, if March or April don't work and we got to do the end of February, I can make that work too. So
How does April 11th sound, guys?
April 11th.
April or March?
April 11th is a Monday.
So for me, right now, what works would be March 10th or 11th.
March, well, not Sunday. Oh, March. Sorry.
10 or
Sorry,
11 looks
sorry,
good to you?
Yeah.
What are we looking at it for times? 6 to 10 or?
Or we could, I mean,
Well, I mean, the last time we did it was
Yeah.
at least 4 hours, I think.
I mean, And I guess the thing too is I don't, you know, if we got more, it shouldn't be packed into 4 hours.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be, I would wanna cap it at maybe 3 hours. My thought is the longer you end up going, you kinda start losing people a little bit, and they kinda wanna leave anyway, so we'd be more productive to go 2 shorter meetings than we would 1 longer meeting.
That's what I was kinda thinking. What's the earliest we could start it with people's schedule?
You mean during the day?
We're not all retired like you are.
No, yeah, well, 9?
Two of you. You guys can start it whenever you wanna start. I'd prefer not to do it on a Friday night.
Oh,
The 11th,
definitely. Oh, the 11th's a Friday, okay.
Well, wait, where are we gonna hold it? I could think of some places that I'd be
Oh,
okay
yeah.
with on Friday.
Yeah. Be more productive.
Might already be there.
Yeah.
You go scout them out tonight and let us know. How's
I
that?
guess for you, and Maggie, what would be the earliest that we could do it on, let's say Thursday the 10th?
The earliest for me would be 4:30.
I could probably start it then too.
You know, and then,
Got nothing
I mean,
right now.
if we go 2.5 or 3 hours, then, I mean, cause that's
I mean-
gonna be over supper.
I guess we could plan 4:30 to 7, and if we wanna get real creative, we can split a pizza.
Well, yeah, or do that, have sandwiches brought in, we've done that in the past. Or when I was on the council, we did that. So,
Sounds fine to me.
We want 7:30 or 4:30 to 7, March 10th, and then if we've got more, we can look out for a future workshop type thing.
yep,
Thanks for accommodating the date. It just happens to be in between my classes.
that's great, that's, because it's gotta work around, you know,
And you're gonna put that on a schedule anyway, so we don't even need to mark this.
Correct, so yeah, that will be scheduled like any other special meeting we may have, we'll advertise for it, and I'll kinda just keep you guys abreast of that it's coming up.
cause department heads will be here and stuff, right? At
Correct.
that one is.
Correct, I mean, Matt's available, so he'll be there,
Yeah,
but he's available in the evenings.
he's cooking.
You didn't have a joint power meeting that night though, did you?
Joint powers are.
Those are Mondays.
Those are Mondays, so yeah, he's.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the agreement with Bolton and Mink for the NPDES permit.
Yeah, Mayor, City Council, I'm sure a few of you guys are aware of Josh Leakley updates. Back in December, we received what they call, thank you, I always forget that. We received what they call the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES. So with that said, we've been aware of this for a couple of years that it has been coming. The big concerns with the new permit is the chloride limits. The plant cannot meet those chloride limits that they're setting for us the way it sits right now. So Bolton Mink so the state has sent these out to almost all waste treatment plants, and almost very few of them can meet these limits. So with that said, a lot of these cities have reached out to other firms to help them navigate to get what they call a variance. So what our hopes would be to get a 15-year variance. That would give us time to plan exactly how we're going to navigate to get to the end goal of reading these new chloride limits that they're setting for us. So with that said, within the we already asked for an extension on from the state on how we're going to get to those limits, and then by end of March, the plans would be to work with Bolton Mink and hopefully get a 10 to 15-year variance. With that said, again, the big concerns with this new permit is the cost, the infrastructure that's going to be needed for this. So over the next year, Bolton Mink will assist us for a scope of the work would cost $5,000 or less. They have already worked with us a little bit, so it's just staff's recommendation that the City Council and Mayor approve Bolton Mink to assist us in the NPDES permit.
Now, is this different than that discharge issue that we have?
Completely different, yep. That's
Okay.
that toxicity reduction. Yeah, that's different.
Okay.
Well, this one, you know, I thought you guys had that computerized so that it just added the chlorine that needed to be added.
Well, that's the problem, is we're getting too much chlorine into our plant. It's the number one reason why we're not, pretty much any city's not able to meet their chloride levels right now is because the state lowered it so much. I would guess everybody in this council chambers right now has a water softener. That's where 99% of it's coming from.
And Rick, yeah, there is a difference, I guess. So the chloride is more like your salt type levels. It would be different than chlorine that we'd put in the drinking water to help balance those things out.
So with that said, I would say in 15 years, there's a very good chance none of us will have a water softener in our plant, because the only way we could probably meet these limits is probably building a new waste treatment plant that eliminates all that before it goes into this.
Water treatment.
Did I say waste treatment plant? Oh, I'm sorry, a water treatment plant. So, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but that is probably likely in the next 15 years, hopefully with all these variances, that we would have to do that. But again, we have a lot of filter plants that we would have to be working with Bruce and the utilities, but we have a lot of filter plants that have almost reached their life expectancy. So, again, we're not talking in a year or two, we're talking big picture 15 years down the road, and that's what Bolton Mink will help us guide us to that point of being able to get, hopefully, a 15-year variance.
But it's not guaranteed. I mean,
I'm never gonna say anything's guaranteed and they send it out, but
No,
I've had meetings with them
variances-
already, and they understand that, no, what we're setting for limits for you, for your new permits, you can't meet those limits. We understand that, and yes, you would be getting a variance. Would we get a 10-year variance? Possibly, but I think realistically, when I say 15 years, because that's what I expect us probably to get.
okay.
But no, it's nothing that they're gonna say, next year, this has gotta be done. It's not possible, and they know that.
Well, and the reason I ask it is, I was kinda gonna go full circle, that I wonder if we shouldn't send a letter to our state legislatures. You know, we have a state-of-the-art, apparently 10-year-old plant that we spent $30 million that we're not even close to being paid off. And now all of a sudden we gotta build something else, you know, to meet these needs. I don't know if the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency just sets those arbitrarily themselves with their group, or if that has to be approved by the legislature, but obviously it's concerning not only to us, but to every municipality that has a wastewater plant. But
Absolutely.
I'm just wondering if we shouldn't look at that as when we do our march on the state capitol, if that should be one of our issues that we bring up to our state legislatures.
Definitely.
I've got my running shoes ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, let's add that to the list then, of one of our concerns.
Yep.
Do we have a date for that? Isn't that in March?
I think we were waiting for a little warmer weather, so I was hoping kind of in April maybe.
So you looking for action on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I need approval to go in contract with Bolton Mink to help us navigate through this. And again, they've done this with many communities already.
Doesn't the league set that date?
Yeah, well, let's talk, but,
Oh, you're talking about something.
yeah,
I
yeah,
see what you're saying, Josh. I'm sorry, that went over my head.
but you're right.
It's not a lot of money, but it's in the budget then?
Yes, we did plan for this.
So moved.
There's been a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a seconded by Bruce. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We'll bring that up under miscellaneous.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing is the annual commercial building audit, and you'll probably do GH and I all together, huh?
Yeah, and I actually wanted to, Mitch, if you can put up my computer here real quick, I'm actually gonna start with the vacant lot inventory, kind of guide me into the other items here, so. Vacant lot inventory is kind of an important one as it relates to the development and, what some of the local developers are looking for information on. To actually give this information out to them as soon as I have the maps done, and then obviously we give you the update here at the first meeting in February typically, but, most common question I'm getting at this point from local developers is how many lots do we really have available? And as of today, you actually can take one more, lot off the total, so we have 54 vacant residential lots in the city limits. Now, that does not mean they're available to purchase, they're just vacant lots that are not built on. Some of these are locked up with people that have either bought them to have a vacant lot next to them, maybe they'll sell them at some point. There might be other, situations where people are just holding on to them to build at some point in the future, we don't know, but, these aren't necessarily on the market. So if you were to look for vacant lots, it will not be 54. So we're getting down there, and that's something, I know the two local developers I've talked to, specifically, I'm not gonna name names, are looking at this, and saying, okay, we probably need to get some, lots going on our inventory here. And I've mentioned this before, we're well-positioned for additional development to take place out in Raven Stream on the west side of town. Over, excuse me, on the south end of town, we have the plat that we had basically concept platted south of First Avenue, actually in the Rinda's backyards. I know they would love to see that happen.
Bringing that up, Ken.
We have that pretty much sketched out that could come in and be platted in short order, and obviously the Bezick Farm property on the north east corner of town. So we've got a number of areas that are ready to go. People could come in with a plat tomorrow. It's just gonna matter of who's gonna do that at this point and get moving. So I think we're getting to that point here, and we're ready to take on that growth. That said, we don't have those lots available at this point, but we did have one bright spot. We did add 17 lots to our vacant lot inventory in 2021, so we didn't lose a lot of ground, and we'll talk about the homes that were built here with the permit stat report, but we're still, in that year or two, potentially, depending on how many are actually able to come online here versus running out and what's actually available in the market. So not panicking yet, but I think the local developers are seeing that as an issue too. Commercial lot inventory, we'll jump ahead to that here. Not a lot of change here. We did have one lot taken off the inventory from last year. That was a vacant lot. There's a Hy-Vee that they obviously have a parking lot on the west side of the Hy-Vee building. So we have 10 vacant commercial lots available, platted, ready to build on here today. Don't have any issue with that. I think that's adequate at this point for what we've been seeing for growth and development. One of the other lots that came off the inventory was the McDonald's. We actually just finished up that permit review today. So they'll obviously be building in front of Coburn's. I've talked to the developer of the remainder of the land out in front of the New Prague Commons Strip Mall. We'll probably see a plat for that coming up shortly as well. So some more activity will occur in that light. And then industrial, we have our industrial park lots. We still have 7 lots remaining out of the 9 out there. EDA is going to be talking about interest in one of the lots on their meeting on Wednesday morning. This is in addition to yet another lot that we hope to have a purchase agreement on within the next month or so. So it could be down to 5 lots in the industrial park in a matter of a month or two as well. So the other thing to note for the industrial lot inventory is that we have the 100 acres of Mox property that we obviously do not control, but we have that guided for industrial development and could potentially have activity move there. We've talked about the extensions of 8th Avenue and 6th Avenue North, if we can lump that in with the street project of Columbus Avenue here in 2022, and get that ready and able to move forward should a bigger project show up in the future. So again, we're getting down the residential lots, but I think we're well positioned to have things move forward. Should a developer want to finally take that step, and I think we're there. I think we're gonna see that happen. So it's not like we're looking around going, where is development gonna happen? We have the places to happen. It's just the leap of faith has to occur, and we're ready to work with the developers as those developments come in.
Well, did you see that on the real estate market? Those 2 buildable are up for sale now?
Oh, yeah, the big,
Yep,
the
the 2
Bezick
acres
Farm
there,
and then.
2.5 acres down by the fire hall?
Correct, yeah, you're talking, millions of dollars out
Yep,
there.
yep. I calculated if I had $4.5 million, I could fix it right up.
Just a smidge short.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, and I know utilities and, Public Works doesn't like to see this, but I don't know that we're gonna see 100-lot developments. Again, I think we're gonna probably see concept plans and then they'll maybe plat 20, 30 lots at a time. Just so they don't have so much, capital tied up in lots that'll sit there for a few years. I don't know that, but, I don't think, you know, the credit is necessarily out there for the developers to just do that, but I could be wrong.
And who knows what the market's gonna do coming up.
Yep. Hard to say, so.
Yep.
Well, that kind of paints a picture of what we have for land available, if you have any other questions on that.
This isn't related to that, but a year or two ago, Scott County Housing, I think, was gonna do a project on a house on the very northeast residential lots.
Oh, yeah,
Did that ever happen?
yeah, so that's their, community land trust land.
Yeah.
And they do still have plans to do that. They're not sure if it's gonna happen here in 2022. I think their bids came in, obviously like every other building project, just astronomically high. And they're trying to meet a price point, but with the land that the CDA owns up on Wenzel Avenue there, the community land trust would have the community land trust set up by the CDA continue to own the land. The homes would be what you would be purchasing, and then the idea is that that land is not part of the purchase equation to keep the cost of homeownership down. So, we just met with, Julie Seegert with the CDA a couple weeks ago and indicated they still plan to do that.
How many lots do they own?
They have 4.
Are they on, or are they excluded from this list?
They are not on that total, I don't believe at this point, because they
So
had
there's still
indicated.
some showing there, but
Oh,
those are not.
they are on there, they are on there, sorry. I did not
Those
take-
are spoken for then.
So those are spoken for, they're not built on yet, that's what I say, they're not necessarily available, they're just still vacant.
Yeah.
Vacant.
Oh, okay, because no one else would, or they're not available to buy, like you said. Okay.
Correct, if I were to take that, we would be closer to 30 lots that would be available to buy today,
Okay.
if that.
But that was a great question, Bruce.
Are there intentions to do all 4 at one time?
I believe so.
And
Kind of
this was
economies
talked
of
about like
scale.
2 years ago, wasn't it? Didn't we talk about it?
Yeah, it's been a
2
couple years. Yep.
Okay.
I totally forgot about that. That was a good question.
They've done, I think, 1 or 2 other community land trust projects in other communities, but this would be kind of the big one that they would put together. But yeah, they're trying to do all of them at one time to save on construction costs, but I don't know. We'll see. So if no more questions on the vacant land inventory, I will, let's see here, I will do the gross statistics. I'm not necessarily gonna go through all the graphs and everything here, but, we were down, in new home construction in 2021, down 13 from the year prior. The interesting thing, and I've mentioned this every year, it's hard to just look at from a year-to-year perspective, because we have a lot of permits in certain years coming at the end of the year, and then we're doing all the work and all the inspections, even though we had the revenue come in prior. That's what happened with the Hy-Vee project too. Actually did the 99% of the work on that after the first of the year, and we had the revenue and the value show up in the 2020 report. So it's kind of hard to just look from a year to year. It looks like, oh geez, we had nothing going on, but it was a very busy year. That's why we look at it over the long run. For example, we've always done the comparison of, you know, our building inspection department has never cost our general fund levy a single dollar, because we were always covering that. But if you try to look at it on a year to year, some years it looks like we're short, and other years we're way over, but the whole idea is that it averages out over time. But we were down in the number of homes to 25 for the year 2021. Construction value is down quite a bit as well, due to the number of homes. Obviously, our average home construction value was up slightly in our 2021 year, from 182 to almost 183.5 in 2021. We still got a lot of the starter homes. Now, one thing you'll note here is you can't buy a house for 183. No, you can't. This is just the bare bones house, nothing added to it, labor and materials. It's not including the lot price, not including, you know, landscaping, not including any of that, appliances, that type of thing. So, I mean, we're seeing split level homes selling for, you know, 380 to 425, for example. We didn't have any townhome units constructed, but we did have 2 apartment units constructed downtown above a building, in the downtown area. Commercial permits were down 28 in 2020 to 19 in 2021. And then that's where we see the big drop on that valuation. Bulk of that value is from the Hy-Vee projects that were in 2020 when the permits were issued, but again, a lot of that work happened in 2021. We did have some other projects occur at the building where they had the fire a couple weeks ago at MVE Biological Solutions. They had done interior alterations, and that was to their break room and office area, which actually was where the fire occurred, unfortunately. And then they were working on a building expansion projects. We're not quite sure where that is gonna play out here. They have to do their repair to the building, and hopefully they continue to move forward with that addition to that building. We also had remodeling and kitchen addition at 1319 Woodfire Tavern, which is still ongoing. They're caught in the whole, supply of items. I think they're, last week, I think they had the wood fire stove finally installed. So they're hoping to open end of the month, early March. And then the remodeling at the Rusty Spoke, which the liquor thing kind of put that a little bit on hold, but they are back to working in there again. I just don't know if they're gonna reapply for liquor license at this point. We'll see how that'll go, or if there'll be a new owner. Remains to be seen. Public permits were down, but the value on them was up, and that was largely due in part to the new utility line garage addition that they are currently working on, and we're up 1.4 million in value for the public permits. So all in all, very busy year. The one kind of the X factor event that happened was the big June 17th hail event. We issued, just related to that storm event, over 600 re-roof permits and 231 re-side permits. And we have a number more that we know we're gonna be getting here in the spring of 2022, but I mean, that's a 1,200% increase in our roofs over a normal year. We're about 45 roofs a year, so that was a big drain on staff for the last half of the year. We were literally like 7:30 in the morning to 4:30 at night doing inspections on roofs with, one of our inspectors. So we'll continue to have that. It was challenging, to say the least, and obviously, like I said, we'll start out this year with the remainder of those being finished up, and then we have McDonald's project and others thrown in there, so expecting to be busy once again here right off the bat, 2022. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions on the permit stats, but I think the supply shortage affected a little bit, and then obviously the cost of building materials, a little bit of a hamper on that, so we'll kind of see how that plays out through 2022, but very, very busy year once again that we had. Then the final report, the annual building audit. This is something I work on every year with the chamber, so Brooke and myself keep track throughout the year, obviously, of changes. EDA gets monthly updates. If you read through their minutes, they get that every month, but kind of breaking it down, we actually had a very busy year in 2020, and that continued into 2021 with businesses moving, opening, changing. So we had 12 new business openings. These are brand new businesses that were never operating in New Prague prior to 2021. Some of those include Hy-Vee grocery store, 1319 Woodfire Tavern, obviously with their remodeling and kitchen they did. The Local 105, another restaurant opened downtown, and then Ivy Brook Parking. So those are some of the more major ones, but if you look through the inventory, you can see smaller ones that moved mostly in and out of the downtown area. We get a lot of that activity through the year. For business closings and changes, you can note whether a business changed their name, maybe they changed the location within the city, maybe they changed the type of work they were doing. And we had 26 of those in 2021 as compared to 32 the year prior. Just to list a couple of those off. So North American Title, for example, moved from a location out on First Street Northeast by Ace Hardware into a building that was vacant downtown, for example. Deputy Registrar moved into a vacant building downtown from the State Bank of New Prague. The Youth Well Center was in a building in the Gerald Brothers building. They moved downtown to 314 East Main. We had the addition on the strip mall by Coborn's with 4 occupiable rental spaces. and those are still available. I actually talked to the leasing agent for the mall last week, and they have some prospects, but nothing that they're publicly announcing yet at this point, and we obviously have to have building permits for they did what they call a vanilla shell, and then they will finish those out as the tenants come in. As I noted in the McDonald's, we just finished up the building permit review today on that, so they'll be starting that as soon as the weather will cooperate for them. Giesenbroy added their patio expansion, and then Midwest Bank merged with their own bank, so some of the things that make up that changes from year to year. And then finally, 29 vacancies of commercial space and or lots. So we're actually down. We had 33 last year, so we're down in vacancies to 29 this year. And as I point out, some of those were some of the changes, like the well moving into a space that was vacant downtown, deputy registrar filling up the space that was vacant downtown. So a lot of activity again there, and we started out the year busy again. If you watch social media, 2FYC Gun Shop is opening in a vacant space at 410 West Main Street. So that's, a lot of the typical activity we get, and a lot of our smaller permit activity for commercial review comes from these changes throughout. So do a lot of working with people, just small business owners, and helping them get situated and off the ground. So kind of fun to look back every year and take a look at what we've had move around. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around it till you really get it in place, but got to thank the chamber director, Brooke Stika, and helping out with this as well. So not that we catch everything, but we try to do the best we can to keep on top of that. So.
Okay, any questions for Ken? Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, the 2022 ambulance RFP.
Yes, the next item, if you may remember, we talked about this at the last meeting. With the current ambulance contract expiring April 1st of 2023, if we were to go out, now would kind of be the time to do it. That way, if we do decide to make a change, that we have a year of transition where we can make sure that all the ducks are in a row. So that being said, I did put together a kind of a sample RFP that my intention at this point, pending your direction, would be to send only to North Memorial and Mayo, just to see what their interests are as two entities for potentially a new contract down the road.
So what action are you asking from us?
So I'm asking if you would actually like to go out for this RFP, or if you'd like me to work kind of directly with North Memorial to renew their contract.
I'm good with that one.
What was mentioned to, was anything said to Mayo? This was before me, like when they
Well, that
came in
Mayo
the
turned out
last
to be
time.
a long drawn out thing, and I don't think it's necessary, especially since North Memorial has never given us a reason to be mad at them, you know what I mean? I wouldn't replace them if they're not broken.
I guess there's always the opportunity, knowing that North Memorial leases the building from us or whatnot, that the city might see higher rents, or Mayo might be willing to provide a service above what North Memorial currently does. That's generally what the RFP process is, the hope that you get a little competition and you can get a better service or product out of the end result. And I know that Mayo's interested, at least, I mean, they've talked to me a few times now saying that, hey, if this ever comes up, we are definitely interested in a chance to get that service.
Well, with that being said, I mean, that's only fair to go ahead and have it then.
I didn't understand what you said, Rick.
I said, if he talked to Mayo already, then it would only make sense to go ahead and let them both come in and explain what their projects are.
And that was just Mayo wanting to meet with me. I think they set up, and I think they met with Dwayne at the same time just to talk about future expansion projects.
Future expansion projects, and they would ultimately like to do that. I don't know how far off on their radar it is. I'd like to be considered.
I took a tour through there. They don't have the emergency room set up for it yet. They were gonna wait to see what they got from us.
And I think it would be like any ambulance service. I mean, if somebody wanted to go somewhere else, they'd take them somewhere else, or if they didn't have the service, that they'd take them somewhere else.
Have to do that, station stable. Guess open to whatever you guys wanna do.
Well, I'll just state the same thing I said last time, and doing this is just following through on what the city council agreed to do before. So it's not introducing anything new or different. We agreed to extend the previous contract, assuming, because we didn't have enough time to respond to that, and put it off, and said we would want a year to look at it. So doing this is just doing what we said we were going to do.
Okay.
In my mind. So we can look at the minutes and we can look at the council meeting, but so I feel that, especially since we're dealing with one of the major employers in New Prague, and one of the better business citizens of our community, I think they deserve a chance to do this. So.
Well, I think it's always prudent to see what will come back in proposals, and if there's any change in cost to the city. I understand that the Mayo Clinic Health System is a big contributor to our community as well. So with that said, I'm fine with moving forward with it.
I'll make the motion that we send the RFP to both Mayo and North Memorial Ambulance.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, now we're down to miscellaneous.
Yes, within miscellaneous, we've got some minutes there for your guys' light reading. And then I also included the 2022 legislative priorities that were approved by Scale that they will be pushing forward this year. So that also is just for your light reading.
Is that scale meeting this Friday?
Yes.
I can never figure out when that is because half of it goes into my junk. And
So, yes, so they've got a lot of meetings. I know I think their executive meeting meets the first Friday of the month. Their general meeting is the second Friday of the month.
Which is that next one here.
Which will be the next one coming up. The third Monday of the month, I think it is the third Monday of the month, is the Services Committee, which generally more discusses sharing of stuff between cities and services provided and that sort of thing. So there are a fair amount of scale meetings to keep track of.
Get confusing.
But I do also know that Councilman Ryan had something that he had mentioned that
Yep,
the mayor had said.
I was gonna bring that up, because you were talking about that day at the Capitol.
The League of Minnesota Cities, where the cities go in.
Yeah,
Legislative priority meetings, yep.
Yes, I just wanted to get the date on
I
that.
think, yeah, we've always, that's my understanding, you've always, I shouldn't say, but last year we didn't, but,
Yep, I will check into that and get back with you guys.
yeah.
It's probably right after the first of the year again.
It's typically, I wanna say it's like the third week of March, but
It's after the legislature gets in and they kinda get,
and that just started last week, right?
yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yes, it's been grand.
Okay, so I'll go around the horn. Meg,
I don't have anything, thank you.
Sean?
I do have one quick question, to Matt. First Street plowing, I know that the sidewalks, they do one side of the sidewalk, I think it's the east side, not the west side. Is there a particular reason for that? And, cause there's sidewalks on both sides, and if there is, I know some of the people on the west side would like, I don't know if they could alternate between storms, so the burden isn't always on them to clear their sidewalk as opposed to the other side of the street. Is that correct? Maybe I got that
You
wrong.
say
too.
First Street, is this First Avenue? Can I?
First Avenue, I'm sorry. I said First Street, First Avenue. I meant First Avenue.
Was that last week we talked about that?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
Oh, they had already brought it up? Did someone
Oh,
bring it
yeah,
up?
they
to-
called us.
Yeah, I talked to, I think 5 homeowners around there that got letters because they weren't shoveling their sidewalk. And I can't recall a time we've ever had written a letter to anybody on that west side First Avenue there, so, we talked about it at a department head meeting and, determined that we've always been plowing the east side. The residents on the west side, we've always allowed them to basically plow or shovel out into the street, and then when it kinda gets filled up, you'll go out there with a plow and pick that up. And for whatever reason, this year, they all just kinda got together and thought, oh, we don't have to do it anymore, cause they're doing the other side, and it's like, no, nothing changed here. So everybody did come into compliance within the past week roughly, and, that was after I talked to a number of angry people, but, yeah, we don't have the staff to be able to take on another one and alternating. I don't know if that would just lead to confusion for people. I don't know.
Well, and I don't either. I've heard from several of them that weren't happy they got the letter,
Yeah.
but, and I know we had a lot of little nuisance snows too, you know, that it just wasn't, you know, they understand the 6, 8 inches, but when you get an inch here and then 2 days later, another inch and a half.
And I only sent the letter because they hadn't touched it at all, which was just unusual.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I don't know if I did talk to one person that got the letter. With the other ones, I didn't realize there was 5 others that had called in to complain, but it did seem like it made sense for me. First of all, the argument was apparently on the east side, there's actually a buffer between where the snow
There's a
can actually go, a boulevard green area. Where on their side of the street, it essentially does go into the sidewalk when the plow comes by.
Yeah, there's no boulevard there.
Yeah, so now they have to get some of that street access off, and then, whether or not you said they can put it back into the street, is that correct?
Correct.
So I don't know if that,
Between Second and Third Street, there's a big retaining wall that's like a 6-foot retaining wall. There's nowhere for the snow to go. We've always let them. I've talked to them every year for the last 10 years.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, we're gonna clean out that snow that you blew into the street. You have nowhere else to put it, we understand. Anywhere else on that sidewalk, they have plenty of grass boulevard. We do not let them blow the snow into the street because they have, or not boulevard, they have plenty of grass
Back into their
on the back of the curb, or back of the sidewalk.
okay, which would be into their yards, essentially.
Yes, but besides that one block where there's a 6-foot retaining wall, there's nowhere else for the snow to go but into the street.
Sure, no, I understand that. So then the complaint that I also got is now they're taking all the salt and whatnot when the plow goes by, pushes it up onto their sidewalk, cause there isn't that buffer zone. Now they're forced to take that and then blow it into their front yards, and now they're complaining that in the spring, that's killing their grass and whatever else. So I'm just passing it on. I didn't know what could be done. I wasn't familiar with the entire thing, but it did make sense that, I don't know why we can't, one storm we do the east side, the next storm we do the west side, and
I'll tell
split
you,
that
if we do
between.
that, if we go every other, Ken will be sending out so many sidewalk letters because they're gonna say, oh, I forgot it was my turn. I thought it was their turn this time. You have to do one or the other,
Okay,
or you do them both. And again, we are not staffed to keep on adding more and more sidewalks. I can't tell you how many times we get calls about, well, you do this area, why don't you do this area?
right, and I know I've got those
Yep.
over the years too, you know.
I wish we could do them all, we just can't.
Right. Is there, and I'm just throwing out ideas too. I have a tough time keeping track of when my recycling can go out because it's every other week or whatever, you know, and I've missed that many a times too. Is it maybe a yearly basis that odd years it's the east side, even years it's the west side, something like that, that people would get into maybe a reminder letter out to them that, hey, this year it's gonna be, the sidewalk's gonna be cleared on the west side. I'm just kicking it out. There's obviously people that feel like they're not getting an advantage that their neighbors do, and you know how that blends in.
Yeah, there's some other areas like we do both sides of 10th Avenue, up and down.
Right.
And we kind of looked at volume of pedestrians too a little bit when we made that determination, but I think it's just kind of coming down, yeah, we just don't have the equipment.
And
I'm just saying, maybe when you guys talk about it,
Yeah.
that could come up in conversation. Maybe there's a more equitable way that it could be.
I think it's something we can explore, kind of as we look at it. I mean, I do think on like a yearly basis is much more possible than on a storm basis, because then you're parsing, well, what's a storm? Why did he get the 6-inch storm and I get all the 1-inch storms?
Yeah, right.
That'd be my luck. Anything
Thank you.
else?
No, that was it. You're gonna check the League of Cities March. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to know about that too, so.
So when does the signs get changed with the new numbers and the new,
Population.
Oh, from MinDOT?
or,
It's from MinDOT and they wait for the census numbers, so there's still an appeal period
Yep.
that has not even
I
started
saw
yet
that,
for
okay.
that. So I'm assuming they're gonna probably wait for that to play out. I don't know that for sure, but, they base that on the 2020 census numbers.
so then they'll change that now, like, will they move signs to better acclimate like the actual city limits?
Yeah, that's
Or
something I'll
is
have
that something that we gotta ask them to do?
I probably, well, see, they should be looking at our annexation maps every year,
Yep.
because they have to obviously take a look at that too. I'll touch base with their
I'm just-
sign people
Yeah,
about that.
just curious. Not a big deal. I just noticed that.
What's so goofy about that is we're gonna get solid numbers and, they make up them solid numbers without, there is a group of people that do not fill out census. They just refuse to do it.
It's more to me for,
I agree too. I brought it up 2 years ago and it was, how much was it? $1,200 a
Yeah.
sign to change the little plaque
Yeah,
on it?
right, yep.
It was ridiculous. I just wanted to put a sticker that glowed in the dark over it, you know?
but
They do that in other cities.
I know they do. I've watched it. Watched them do it.
See, our mistake was asking them, and then now they're watching.
Yeah,
for
no.
it.
Well, you know what I said? I don't care. Have them send the letter to me because it'll
Right.
go right in the shredder. You can come and
That's all I
scrape it
did.
off.
Bruce.
A question just occurred to me when, we were talking about that, Dennis was talking about the attachment to
Building?
the statue or whatever
The
relief
relief,
he's making. Is that, I understood our conversation with the landowner, the bar, was a possible mural. We're starting to talk about affixing something to the wall.
Yeah, we've not talked about that with them, so if that's something that, I don't know how serious they were, I'd not heard that till tonight, actually.
Oh, okay, so I was just curious, it just clicked to me that we're talking about something totally different now. When
Yep.
someone says he's gonna attach something to my building, it's different than painting on it in my
Yeah, so
mind.
I've never broached that with the owner, obviously, and, as we get working on the final agreement with
And
council.
I would talk to or consider talking to the attorney as far as what issues that brings to the city and liability and future maintenance issues
Yeah, 'cause
on
there's-
someone else's property to
And there's
do
gonna be
something.
Penetrations into the brick and all that, I'm not sure, we need
Yeah.
to be careful with that,
Yeah.
so.
And Dennis is meeting, I think he said next week or within the next
Yep.
2 weeks to solidify design, so.
Yep.
Well, Mark is gonna be pretty easy going about it.
He
I
was,
talked to him about
he
it.
just wants to, if, you know, God
It
forbid,
confiscate, you know,
if a bus came through over that curb and hit his wall, he'd be forced to rebuild it within that 18, you know,
Correct.
to get off the city
It makes
property.
sense to just
Yeah,
line it
and
up
he's
where-
just worried
where
if he
he's
ever
got the
goes to sell it, that could be a sticking point and whatnot, so.
I just not aware of very many situations, if at all, that we have a city-owned piece of public park property on someone else's, on a private business.
right.
I just not aware of that. So what's the legal ramifications of that?
I'm gonna guess we probably need a separate agreement to do what he's mentioning.
I would. All right, I
No
still,
doubt Mark will
I
sign
do
it.
got, I got 3 complaints last week. The one of them, we're always getting it from Dennis, you know, what I mean? But that, the mail, once again, there was 2 other old people that. And, Katie did a great job, and some old people the next day, we had, the investigator come in and do just a little spiel about being careful about dealing with, fraud
Yep.
on the computer. Well, Katie came in, she did a great job. The next day, we dealt with 3 people that got hit with fraud. They actually mailed out the checks even, you know, so
Oh.
the next day, we were trying to get the mail lady, get that one out of there, you know. But she did a great job. It's too bad it didn't work. But the post office one, I don't know what we're gonna do. I'll talk to you about it because I don't know. Does the post office want us to build a building and then offer to lease it to them? Is that what they're?
That's what we gotta figure out. And, you know, it's easier said than done working with the federal government, so. So that's what
I
we're
did get
figuring
3.
out.
The one was from the one we always get it from, but,
Yeah, you forwarded that to me,
yep.
but, you know, I mean, we're aware, but there's certain.
There is a lot of monkeying around to do with that one.
Cause I know that emails went out. I don't know if the whole council got that one email that Kay sent.
Is that the one I sent you?
No. Kay sent a email to Klobuchar, and their aide gonna look into either rebuilding or remodeling the post office. It's like, it needs more than remodeling.
Rick, I can't remember if I responded to you or if it was just in my head. That the 5-minute sign that he was talking about, the reason why that got put up is because that was there before the Main
Yep.
Street project. And so we didn't put that up to try to appease the people who wanted a handicap spot. We put that up because it was already up.
Cause I sent you that letter too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, people are upset about it, and I don't blame them. I mean, you can't stop and get out of your car and go drop anything off. I mean, a 1-minute project turns into about 20.
You brought up something, I just, sorry to take my term, but the handicap signs on Main Street, I'm not, to me, it's not, they're not really very well delineated in the winter when there's snow on the ground. So I don't know if there's a potential putting some, in the summer, maybe paint on the curb or something to better highlight where they start and stop. And I don't know if that's an issue, but it's just a curiosity of mine. When I see that, because today I was wondering, well, where does that start and where does it stop? Is it right next to the sign, or is it in front of the sign, or is the sign in the middle of the parking spot? You know, in the winter, you can't tell where it is. But
That's something we can look at, but yeah, the sign starts at the front of the parking spot. That's how I think it's.
Then you park behind it. Or-
The
Yes.
idea is when you park into a stall, you can see the handicap sign and you can see that there's up to a $200 fine. It's supposed to be visible when you're parked there.
when you're parked,
When
okay.
you're parking.
I've seen some cities paint their curb blue.
So that, maybe that's just me,
Yeah.
we don't do it, but
The whole
the
spot.
curb is visible. That's why I thought maybe that could be done. But
That's all I had.
Fire chief? Matt?
Nothing.
Jim?
I just wanna let you know, I started, advertising for, a hiring process once again. We have just brought on 2 officers, so we're down our 2 that left. And then I anticipate that another one will be leaving in March. So I wanted to get the process going to hire. We went through, I think, 3 people on our previous list. And I just went out to refresh the list right now, to try and get some more depth in that list.
Now who did we lose?
Nobody yet, but I anticipate that, Jessica Bourne will be leaving our department. So they're hard to replace people that have been here 5, 10, 16 years. So we will keep working towards that.
Are they getting out of the profession, or is there
Nope.
better opportunities somewhere, or?
Better opportunities,
Is it something we need to look at, though? Are you concerned about it before you leave?
you guys chose not to look at it when the police were negotiating.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's part of it that's reflected back and it's an employee's world right now, because they can go and work wherever they want right
Right,
now.
right.
As long as they're an average officer right now can kind of pick the department they wanna go and work. But part of that negotiation that happened, they didn't feel very supported at all.
And I think some of it is too, kind of, we can probably try to discuss strategies too during kind of our visioning meeting as to what could we do to help them feel more supported, as a department as a whole, I figure, so.
How many applicants
I
did we?
feel bad about that.
Yeah, I do too, but, we have to live within our means. If taxpayers can talk to their council reps if other cities are paying more. I thought we were pretty well in line with
Yeah, I
most
thought we
people.
were too. I thought we were actually above.
It pains me that they think that they're not being supported just because we couldn't give them 100% of what they wanted, but, how many applicants did we have for the last person that? when Andy
11.
left?
We had 11.
Okay, so we're not, I mean, I'd still think New Prague would be a pretty decent place to land if you're a police officer. There's a lot worse that,
Yep, yeah, no, we're, you know, we're a medium-sized department, so there's interest. I know, officers that are on the department are actively trying to recruit, just like all other departments in the state right now. But that's some of the draw right now that, officers are talking to other officers and they weigh out what the opportunities are for training. One of the departments in the northern part of the county are just, they have that much more depth that it, doesn't affect the scheduling as much. Or if somebody is on light duty, the department said, hey, we can handle up to 5 on light duty. Because they have different aspects of their department that they can put people into. Versus we have somebody out right now that I was able to offer 2 days of light duty, but then beyond that, I don't have light duty available.
okay.
So, yeah, it's something we're working towards and moving forward, but, it's very difficult to stay fully staffed right now because of that turnover. And even the 2 that are hired now, they are in their training. One's, 7, 8 weeks into it, the other one's just a couple weeks into it.
How long
So,
is that training process?
16 weeks.
It is.
Yeah.
Is that standard? That seems like a long time if you already have your license and you've
Well, you
graduated
might
from
have your
school.
license, but you don't necessarily have any experience.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and at least the last 2 that we hired don't have a lot of experience.
Okay.
So you need to be able to train them through your field training process so that you can document that they have been trained in your policies and procedures.
Okay.
Sometimes, I mean, if we hire somebody else from a local department, even within the county, that training could go a little quicker because they have some of that basic stuff
Okay.
that they already know. Any other questions?
No, anything else?
Nope, nothing else.
Nothing more?
Josh? Okay, next thing on the agenda is to review the city administrator. Now, do we wanna do that tonight? It accidentally got put on this agenda. Or do we wanna table it till
Let's table it, guys.
Yeah, it's been a long.
next meeting?
No offense.
I actually was expecting it to be next meeting, so that's perfect.
We're good.
So, because this amendment screw up is gonna be a strike against you.
It was not one of my goals to
Well,
properly land that meeting.
Well, I'm okay, so if there isn't any other business, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Should we,
Oh.
have a motion to table it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Or,
You don't have to do that, do you?
Yes, we do.
I think because it is on the
Because
agenda.
we approved the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
so
Without taking it off first.
Yeah,
Will it be inside the city council meeting or as part of the city council meeting?
correct. So if we tabled it, it would just be I'd put it again at the end of the meeting.
Okay,
So
it's not
that
a
it would be
separate
part of the
time,
city
okay.
council meeting, but it would be at the very end.
Table it to the next meeting. So
Second.
okay, there's a motion, a second. Any other discussion?
A question that I have is, are we gonna use a form or anything?
I don't know how
Or
they
what,
did Mike's in the past.
I know, I mean, it looks like a form was used. I know Councilman Wolf sent me the form that was used in 2019, it looked like, or 2020. And I can provide that form as well. I kind of looked around, forms are pretty standardized in terms of kind of the same things they talk about. And I guess this would also be an opportunity, if you guys want to see any changes on the form going forward too, we could make those as well.
So are you saying the one that we used with the previous mayor? Is that the same form?
Administrator, yes.
That's fine with me. I would appreciate having something, because I won't be at the meeting, so if I could just submit it.
Ah, right, forgot about that.
And then, you can take that for what it's worth. I think in the past, those were, at least my short time here, they were completed and, the mayor or someone compiled them.
Yeah, Yep, you're
And that was what was discussed, the compilation was discussed at the, I don't know who did that, if the mayor did it, or?
It was, yeah.
It was Chuck.
It was Chuck, yeah.
And then how did that work? Did he discuss it at an open meeting with him?
He sent it to the council and then,
Published in the New Prague Times.
no.
So generally, the way these meetings work is if something like that's done, we then have a closed session to discuss
Right.
personally, and then, according to, Minnesota data practices, after the meeting is closed, you then just have to basically say, we had a discussion and
Yeah.
things went well, things went terribly, he's not gonna be around, that sort of thing.
Anybody wanna buy a house?
So,
So if we follow that same format, if I remember correctly, either you or someone would send them to us, and then we send them back to you, or,
Like a week ahead of time or
Okay.
something.
and then you
So
compile
I
them.
can get those sent out to you guys.
okay, and then send them to me and then I'll compute them, put them together, compile them.
Okay.
Okay,
And if you could do that this week, that would be great.
I will take care of it tomorrow.
okay,
Great.
thank you. So,
I want to make sure I did that because I intended some very glowing statement.
so then,
Really great question.
Did we table it? We didn't take a vote on the
did you take a
table.
vote on it? I
No.
can't remember, okay.
You got a motion and a second.
Okay,
for that.
there's a motion and a second, so, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries, that part's tabled till next meeting. And then that next meeting's gonna be on a Tuesday because of
President's Day.
President's Day. And then I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for helping me along, limp along tonight.
I got overtime, 9 o'clock.
I didn't